Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 462. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Matt.
Hey, what's up?
This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we talk about the books we read this week. Coming up on today's show, we have Detective Comics 1098, Superman Unlimited, issue 2, or I still have Summer Unlimited, issue 2 written for some reason. We have Wonder Woman issue 22, Nightwing 127, Absolute Flash issue 4, Batman Superman World's Finest 40, Batman and Robin Year 1 issue 8, The New Gods issue 7, and Krypto, The Last Dog of Krypton issue 1. Plus, I've got a Patreon book. I'll be talking about Batman and the Outsiders issue 25. So, plenty to come up on the show today. Plus, Solicits are out this week. We got September Solicits, so that's the whole thing. So, you know, I'm very sleep deprived, Matt, and and it's the heat. There's like a 3-day heat wave happening. Luckily, it cools down significantly tomorrow, but I have been struggling to sleep for longer than, like, say, 3 hours in a single stretch for the past few days. I'm miserable, I'm delirious, and I will no doubt say some stupid things over the course of the next 3 hours, but I'll do my best. Consider that a warning.
Gotcha. Now you know how it feels to be me all the time.
Yeah, but it's not the heat causing it for you. You're used to Vegas heat.
Oh. No, I probably have CTE from years of playing sports, so.
Alright, well, delightful. Have a nice week, Matt.
You know, less talked about it, the better. So, you know, I did watch Hatchet, which I know you've told me not to watch.
Yeah, why did you
listened?
Why did you watch Hatchet?
I was home from work yesterday, and I wanted an 80s slasher. And hold up, I know it's not an 80s slasher; it's from the 2000s. But I couldn't find one on any of my streaming services that I hadn't seen. Right, and I was like, oh, well, this is on Tubi. I'll give it a watch. And the first half almost put me out. The first half is very, very not good. The back half, while not being good, is at least entertaining enough when the kills start happening. But, and then it just ends. And I didn't know if that was just the way that Tubi goes, but apparently the movie just cuts to black on a screen. And so I thought there was something wrong with Tubi. I went back and watched it 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is just how it goes.
Many may argue, Matt, there is something wrong with Tubi.
Yeah. Well, Tubi doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to ask questions. They seem to have everything on there for free.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Hatchet's not very good. It's meant to be a throwback to a different era, but it's nowhere near as good or has the charm of any of the films that it's trying to emulate.
No, it needs to be thrown back. Now, am I eventually going to get to Hatchet 2? Probably. Why? Because I don't learn. I'm the guy that keeps putting the fork in the light socket. Because maybe this time it won't get me.
Well, you got Hatchet 3 as well. You've also got Victor Crowley, which is the 4th one. They changed it up with the naming on that one just to lure you in.
I will say I did like seeing Kane Hodder in an actual acting role. I mean, he doesn't say anything, and it's a silent part, but it was cool to see him. For those that don't know, that's the actor who's played Jason the most times. So, seeing him pop up in there. And I think he plays Victor Crowley under the makeup. I think
so, yeah. He played Jason 4 times. In 7, 8, Jason Goes to Hell, which, to be honest, it barely counts because he's only in like a scene of that. No. And Jason X is the ones he played Jason in.
But yeah, so seeing him pop up, so that was at least entertaining. But yeah, also watched Goodfellas with my wife last night because she's never seen it. So so yeah, so her finding out the source of certain memes, like the Ray Liotta laughing, right, and then basically anything Pesci says in the movie, you know, seeing that wash over was pretty fun. But yeah, that's still a real solid movie. I don't know how you feel about Scorsese's, you know, overall filmography.
Very up and down. He's got movies that I think are great. He's got other movies that I think are a chore to sit through. It's very, very all over the place. He's made legitimate 10 out of 10s, but he's also made stinkers.
So where do you put Goodfellas? Is that one of his 10 out of 10s?
It's not. No, I think Goodfellas is a little overrated, but it's still good. Like, it's still a pretty good movie. But it's not. Like, you know, every so often someone will raise the weird question of, like, well, which one's better, The Godfather or Goodfellas? And I'm like, obviously it's The Godfather. What are you talking about, you morons? But Taxi Driver, though. Taxi Driver's a 10.
Okay.
And honestly, his second best movie? Hugo.
Really?
Yep.
I'm a big Aviator guy, so...
That's all right.
That colors my opinion.
Hugo's better.
You know? But yeah, it was yeah. Oh, that said, you know, you're picking on the guys that think Goodfellas is better than The Godfather. I'm firmly in that camp. I'd much rather watch that again than ever see The Godfather again. So
well, there's no accounting for taste, intelligence, and integrity.
I'll say the 3 T's, but again, there's an I in there.
So 2 of them start with an I, Matt.
I know. Yes. So, you know, but yeah, that was mainly my week. I was gonna try to get to the movies, never got there. I didn't feel like it. For whatever reason, I thought Megan 2 was out this weekend. It's not out till next weekend. So, you know, I'll eventually see Ballerina at some point. But yeah, I just didn't want to. Couldn't get up off the couch. So. Ended up just sitting here watching things on the old TV.
Yeah, I had to watch Superman Returns this week, which
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a big fat dud. It's a big fat soulless, depressing dud. It's amazing how different it is to what came after, but in some ways is just as bad. It's
bad in a different way. Yeah, it's bad in a different way.
Really, but I don't know. Some other facial expressions would have been nice just across the board. But yeah, it's full of problems. It's full of issues. The full 2.5 hour epic review of that for collector's cuts coming in a few weeks, guys. So look forward to that. Yeah,
that's about as long as the movie is.
Yeah, unfortunately, the movie is 2.5 hours, and it's a goddamn slog with bad pacing.
Yeah, very bad pacing.
Anyway, all right, let's get into things. We've got a lot to get through today. Let's have a look at the Kindle rankings, the list formerly known as the ComiXology Top 10. Matt, what is your guess for number 1 this week?
Well, Absolute Flash is kind of the bottom rung of the absolute ladder. So I don't know if that would be there. So I'm going to guess Ultimates 13.
That is correct. Yes, Ultimates is number 1. Number 2 is Absolute Flash. Number 3 is Aliens versus Avengers. Number 4 is G.I. Joe. Number 5 is X-Men. Number 6 is Superman Unlimited. 7 is Amazing Spider-Man. 8 is Wonder Woman. 9 is New Gods. And 10 is Detective Comics. So the bottom half of the top 10 is very DC focused.
Yeah. I like New Gods popping in there. So that's good.
As do I. Looking for other DC stuff underneath. Krypto's at 13. World's Finest is at 14. Batman and Robin Year One's at 16. Nightwing's at 17. So, you know, nothing's too low out of the major books. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, G.I. Joe does well, I guess. Baffling to me is that's like an entire property that was just a nothing thing in the UK. So G.I. Joe being successful is just a weird oddity to me. But fair enough.
It has its fans, and I don't feel like it's being propped up by, you know, variants or whatever. So the fact that it's always so high must be. But that's Williamson, though, right?
It is. It is. Yeah, and I am, you know, I feel how I feel about his work on characters I care about. You ain't catching me dead reading the Joshua Williamson G.I. Joe. I mean, I don't know who you could put on a G.I. Joe comic to make me read it. I don't think anyone could. You could put Tom Taylor on that book and I wouldn't give a shit, so...
I'd be curious to see what he would do, because he does good team stuff, but, you know, I feel like we kind of what he would have done, we kind of already got in the Suicide Squad, you know. But yeah, I won't say I wouldn't be completely uninterested, but yeah, it's one of those, you know, I get curious about the Transformers stuff because I still have I still came up with Transformers and I have a fondness for the property, but you know, all the Daniel Warren Johnson of it still hasn't got me to check it out. I don't know what would get me on G.I. Joe outside of like one of my all-time favorite writers, and I don't even think that would be enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the September solicits for DC then. A couple new things here, stuff that we kind of knew about way in advance anyway, for the most part. But we'll go through, see what's there. I'll try and keep this fairly brisk. So, Batman #1 is at the top of the list here. Makes sense. They're relaunching with a new #1 with Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez. Of note, Connor was telling me last week that the last two Hush 2, well, the last two of half one of Hush 2 have been delayed and will, I think the last one, like issue 6 of that group, isn't supposed to be out now until October or something. So it's already in a weird place where you're going to have Batman issue 1 in September, but then Batman issue 130 something or whatever number we're on the following month. Yeah.
Just mercifully kill it.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's a bit of a mess.
We're good. Yeah. What about Fraction, Jimenez, Batman? Get me excited.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I'm curious. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm excited, but I'm definitely curious. So we'll see how that pans out. I know Connor's rejoicing this week because Red Hood.
I immediately saw that and I thought the same exact thing. Oh, Connor's jumping with joy.
Yeah, Red Hood issue 1 is launching with Gretchen Felker Martin writing and Jeffrey Spokes on art. I have never heard of that writer, so I don't know what to expect from them.
Jeff Spokes seems like a familiar name, like maybe a fill-in somewhere.
No, yeah, I'm pretty sure he was on a Tom King book recently, Matt.
Okay, maybe that's why then.
Yeah, that wasn't a fill-in. I'm pretty sure. I want to say it was Jenny
Sparks.
Yeah, Jenny Sparks. Okay. Yeah, I want to say that's who was on Jenny Sparks. Yeah, Huntress is in this book, so which I guess, you know, she's not really been doing much recently, and I guess she's a decent fit to be hanging out with Red Hood, I suppose. So yeah, as much as I prefer her to Red Hood because Red Hood's Red Hood, but you know, fair enough. I can't really fault, but yeah. Erupting from the events of Hattush comes DC's first ever in-continuity mature readers ongoing Red Hood series. So this is a rated
don't
M.
Like that.
Rated M for mature. Spinning out.
And I want to clarify. It's not the mature rating. That's fine. It's the out of the pages of Hush too.
Yes.
Because I do not like that characterization of Jason at all. So, oh man.
Yes. Sure. Well, I hope whatever this is starting on is not relying on where like the issue that was supposed to be out of Batman before September, you know, because otherwise it'll be spoiling things for like some Hattush issues that haven't come out yet.
All I need to know is stuff has happened, and now here, that's all we need.
Yes.
Shoot.
Absolute Batman issue 12. We're getting full on Croc based on that cover.
Look at that.
So
he got a long tail.
He does. And then we got DC Work in Progress, Absolute Batman issue 1. So just I think it's just a pencils and inks only version of Absolute Batman 1.
They're called Artist Edition. Original art of DC's greatest issues and artist original artboard side. So it's big, oversized.
It's big.
And
oh, that's why it's $15 for one issue. Okay. And then Absolute Superman issue 11. So that's
I like that cover.
Coming out. We got Absolute Wonder Woman issue 12, which notably they appear to be censoring someone on the cover. Yeah, it's a villain, I would assume, based on the poses that are on the cover. But juicy. We'll see who that is in a few months lately. Absolute Green Lantern issue 6. So that's cool. We got Absolute Flash issue 7. I had to look at that cover for like a good couple of seconds there to see if there was anything on it other than just like blurry wind. But yeah, there is a Wally down in the bottom right. And
it looks like tornadoes and lightning and, you know.
Yeah. I did it, everyone. I found Wally, which the Americans don't get because they call him Waldo. But in the UK, he's Where's Wally? And that was a funny joke.
I wonder why they did that. Because Waldo is just, you know, he could have been Wally or Waldo in either place. So I wonder why.
My only assumption, cause I don't know which one was first. I don't know if the US or the UK had the thing first. But my only assumption is that when it went to the second place, that there was already someone famous named Wally or Waldo that made them go, no, we should change it because we don't want to overstep with this celebrity. But now we don't even know who that is because it's been like 80 years or whatever it's been.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. That's my only guess. Superman 30. Gee, can't wait. More Williamson Superman. I'm frothing at the mouth.
We got Booster. We got Dan Mora.
I don't care.
So, you know.
I don't care that we have Booster rescuing a mediocre run for me. What is more interesting, though, is Adventures of Superman, the Book of L, issue 1. This is the Philip Kennedy Johnson series.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Goodlisky on the art, so this is Johnson returning to Superman and presumably doing what he was building up to in his Action Comics run, so it's kind of a follow-up to that. So yeah, this is instantly kind of top of the line, and look at that the Superman Maxi series on top of the 3 ongoings.
Mm-hmm.
We're all Superman ahead this year. Speaking of Superman Unlimited issue 5, Superman's headed into the big Kryptonian doors. Sorry, Kryptonite doors is what I meant to say.
Kryptonite doors.
Yeah, they're big and they're green. Action Comics 1090. Continuing with the Superboy stuff. And then we got Supergirl issue 5, which seems to be adding more animals to the Super Pet roster, based on the text and the cover.
Who's the little mini gorilla? That's what I want to know.
I think that's just Titanium. I think that's just a perspective thing.
Oh, okay.
I think so anyway. Just based on the solicit text. But the bunny's there, who's already been introduced in the book with the I don't know if you read issue 2 yet because you were off last week.
Oh no, yeah. I read everything except for Trinity and the Jason Todd book. So yes, the reveal of the other Supergirl.
Yeah. The Jason Todd book was good though, just for the record.
I'll get to it. I had to get through these books for this week before I could touch that. But yes, the bunny, the some more kitties. They're streaky. So
did Streaky have a couple of kittens? What's the buzz here?
Yeah.
Then we got Krypto, Last Dog of Krypton, issue 4. Is coming out. We got Wonder Woman issue 25, which they are doing a few extra pages for, as they sometimes do with the 25s. So that's cool. Daniel Sampier on the art. Actually, that reminds me. I was almost about to mention it there, but we got sidetracked. Supergirl 5, Sophie Campbell's not doing the art on that issue. She's still writing, but we've got Paulina Ganesho on the art. So, which, to be fair, doing both writing and art, she was eventually bound to at least need an issue off of the art.
Yeah.
That's fair
4
enough.
issues seems, let's say that you get through the 4 issues. That's a pretty decent sized arc to do art and writing. So
yeah, I just wonder if that's going to be like ongoing now. Is she just going to be writing, or is she going to go back to doing the art for the major arcs and just have like fill-in artists to give her a chance to get ahead in the other pages. We got Trinity, Daughter of Wonder Woman issue 4. So that's there. We got Justice League Unlimited issue 11. We have Cheetah in Cheshire, Rob the Justice League issue 2. Which I forgot this was a thing, and I sort of skimmed past it and thought to myself, I thought to myself, oh yeah, that's that weird mini. I don't need to care about that. And then I'm like, oh wait, no, it's Greg Rucka. Never mind. I take that thought back.
Yeah,
I take it back.
It's Rucka and Nicola Scott. Yeah.
I take it all back. Clearly, this is going to be one of the must-read things of the month. I forgot. Forgive me. So
you said you were going to do that last month too. You said it's going to come up in a solicit, and I'm going to forget this was the thing. That's
I
funny.
knew it. I know what I'm like. We've been doing this long enough. I know what my patterns are when it comes to these things. Justice League Red issue 2. Speaking of books that are still new and I forgot about because they've not started coming out yet. So cool. We got Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong 2 issue 4. Is that? I don't think it is. I was going to say, are those Ghidorah heads? I don't think they are.
No, it looks more like Tiamat from the last GV or Godzilla Kong Empire, whatever that was called, New Empire. So.
No, I wouldn't say it looks like anything
the
in those.
You don't think it looks like Tiamat?
Was there snake creatures in that last movie? I don't remember a snake-like creature.
Yeah. And wasn't that the one that Godzilla went after in Antarctica?
Antarctica? What are you talking about? Did they even go to Antarctica in the last movie?
Yes, he did. He went down there and absorbed all the radiation.
Oh, okay. That wasn't important to the plot, which is why I forgot it. I do not.
Massive primordial sea monster resembling a sea serpent with crocodile-like jaws and a dark purple body.
I do not remember that part of the movie, so I do not remember what these things look like. So you may be right. I have no idea.
Anyways, I just remember my favorite part of that movie is where Kong picked up the little one and used him as a weapon. That still gets me to laugh.
No, my favorite part is when Kong looked shit scared because Godzilla was charging at him and he knew he was going to get his ass whipped again. That was my favorite part. The look of fear in that big dumb ape.
He's not dumb.
Oh, he's dumb. He's
He has opposable thumbs. And new hands.
Lots of idiots have opposable thumbs. I don't know what the point you're making is.
True. It's true. What's next?
Detective Comics 1101. There's no career saying that. But yeah, continuing Taylor's run. New arc starting in this issue, so that's cool. And on art still. We got Nightwing 130. Nightwing may have a sidekick, apparently, according to the text. So
I really like this cover. It's got Nightwing on like a gargoyle of like a bird with its wings out, and just the way that the red background and the shadows, and then the blue pops on the red. It's a really nice looking cover.
Yeah, what's the sidekick's name going to be? Nightwing and Hawkboy. No, Nightwing and Dusk Duck.
Dusk Duck.
Yes, Dusk Duck.
Midnight Duck. No, that's already a character.
Nothing.
I
don't know. Batgirl 11. This is the conclusion to the Three Swords arc, which we're not actually on. We're still in the book of Shiva right now. So
Book of Shiva.
Yeah, we'll see what this little arc is afterwards.
I will say they talk about the Dragon Ranch, and I want to go there. Seems like it'd be a fun place.
Catwoman 79 is there. We got Birds of Prey 25, which they're not doing an oversized issue for, but it does sound like we're not even at the end of an arc. It just sounds like it's the next big step on the story. So that is cool. It's a fun cover though, with the sort of ripped pages of the various birds.
Yeah. And someone mysterious standing in the middle.
Yes. Yeah, it's basically the negative space that's created with the rips, which I think is a cool idea, but I think the extra little bit of like ripped paper to like create the space between the arm that's on the hip, I do think that makes it less obvious that that's what's happening. Like if that bit wasn't there, it would. I don't know, like, it took me a second for my brain to process that the empty space was making that shape, as opposed to it just being like a black silhouette that was put on top, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, Poison Ivy 36 is there. I'm sure Matt will be loving it. We got Harley Quinn 54. Who the hell's on this cover with Harley? Who's this green and orange looking chicks?
They're apparently the Gun Buddies. Don't know who that is.
Yeah, I never heard of them.
They look like they're straight out of 90s comics. They even got pouches.
We got Batman and Robin 25, start of a new arc, and Robin's getting a new costume apparently. So, cool.
So Damian's wearing some green.
It looks like
what we're seeing.
It looks like he's wearing something a bit more traditional.
Yeah.
So maybe he embraces classic Robin to a point.
Yeah.
We got Titans 27. So that's continuing. We got Batman and Robin Year 1 issue 11. So this is the penultimate issue of that series. We'll have more on the current issue later today. We got Batman Superman World's Finest 43. Continuing the Bizarro arc, which is starting next month's issue. We have Batman Dark Patterns issue 10. This is the start of the 4th arc because these are all 3-issue arcs. So that's cool.
Called Child of Fire.
Yes, and the cover has flames coming out of Batman's cowl, which is kind of an interesting look. Well, I'll say more smoke, but it's all bright yellow, which made me think of flames.
Bright yellow. Looks like Batman just yelled flame on.
We got Batman Long Halloween, The Last Halloween issue 10, so that's wrapping up in September. You'd think they'd hold it for 1 month and have it out in the month of Halloween, but I'm not going to judge. Maybe it'll get delayed. I mean, it's near the end of the month. If it gets delayed just 2 weeks, it'll be in October, so maybe it will. We have The Flash issue 25, so that's continuing. We got Green Arrow 28. That's a go. We got Green Lantern Corps issue 8. Continuing the Starbreaker Supremacy, which is the arc we're about to go into, presumably. We have the New Gods issue 10, which I only glanced at the first sentence of the text, but it feels like I've read too much. It's giving me things that I have too much context for it based on what I just read this week. So I'd recommend not always reading the solicit text if you can help it. And then we got Green Lantern 27. It's weird the Green Lantern Corps was like 3 books before in the list to Green Lantern. I don't know, that's just an odd placement for me, but but that's cool though. Starbreaker Supremacy here as well. So the 2 books are actually crossing over with that storyline. We got Aquaman issue 9 is next. Not that I'll be reading it.
Justice League Blue, and then we have a Justice League Red. Good lord.
Yes, but he is back on Earth at least, so all of that crap that I hated at least seems to have been over by this point. So we'll see. JSA issue 11. Not much to say. There's no cover. Well, there's a variant cover, but the main cover is not there yet for whatever reason. Mr. Terrific Year 1 issue 5. Black Lightning's guest starring in this issue, so neat. You got Fire and Ice When Hell Freezes Over issue 6. We have the New History of the DC Universe issue 4, which is the final of the 4 issues, and according to this text, starts at Flashpoint. So the final of these 4 issues will start at Flashpoint and go to present day. So that's neat. I do like that the variants for this, at least the ones that they've got on show here, are young John Kent and Joe Mullen. So I like the idea that the variants for each one will represent characters that were introduced in the era that they're talking about, which...
Yeah, and then if you look at the cover, they have a lot of those characters too, right? Dreamer's there, Wallace West, you have the Khalid version of Dr. Fate. So it seems like that's what they're doing with these covers.
Yeah, then we got a surprise, a sequel to a Black Label book that we didn't see coming, and this is The Batman Second Night, issue 1. This is the Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins book that was a 3-issue or 4-issue? It was 3 or 4 issues.
I think it was 3, and they were oversized.
Yeah, it's 48 pages, so yeah, they're pretty beefy. So yeah, we're getting a sequel set in 1940, and I really liked that first one, so I'm pretty down for this.
I was just thinking about that book the other day, about how we haven't had like a Black Label like that reset everything in a minute, and so that one came in and felt real fresh. Setting them in the 30s. So now this looks like it's going to start in 1940. A little bit of time movement. We'll do it again.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty psyched for this because I mean, if nothing else, Perkins' art was an absolute stunner in that first book. So I am down for more. Thank you very much. And then we got Superman, the Kryptonite Spectrum, issue 2. So obviously this is one that was only just announced for last Solicits. We got Resurrection Man, Quantum Karma, issue 6. Yeah, so this is the end of the series, I think, based on the text here. The climactic final chapter of Ram V and Anand RK's mind-bending story. So, I mean, I obviously I didn't expect Resurrection Man was an ongoing. I thought it might be 12 issues because they never specified, but fair enough. If it's 6 at 6.
Although it's weird because it doesn't feel like it's paced for 6 issues, right? It still feels like we just got to some of the things through 3. Was it 3, right?
Yeah, we've had 3 so far. It's such a unique book in terms of what its pacing and its focus is anyway, though, that I'm trusting that Ram V will wrap his story up in a neat way here. So cool. Then we got Immortal Legend Batman issue 2. This is the manga looking Batman by Kyle Higgins. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. We have Batman Gotham by Gaslight, A League for Justice issue 3, the sequel series to that. Or really the second half of it, which, it was pretty clear it was meant to be 12 issues to begin with, and they just split it in 2. And then we have the weird news of the week, which is, I actually saw Tom Taylor teasing on Blue Sky that there was an announcement coming this week, and I forgot about it until I looked at the solicits, and I got to this book, and, I don't want to be a downer, a Debbie Downer here, right? But you tell me there's a new Tom Taylor book coming, I'm like, yes. Go on, a new Tom Taylor DC book. Give me it. What is it? What character is he working on? He's doing Court, Children of the Round Table, which is a new take on the Legend of Camelot. I could not give less of a shit about the premise of this.
So you're saying that you'd rather have had him doing G.I. Joe?
They're equal to me. They're equal. I have no interest in either. I don't even want to try this, despite the fact that it's Tom Taylor. That is how little I care for the premise of this.
I tried. He had a creator-owned called 7 Secrets that I got 2 issues into. Then my shop stopped getting it because I didn't have it on my poll. Same artist as that, so I almost feel like this was going to be a creator-owned, and DC said, "Oh no, do it for us." Because this just feels weird to do at DC, right? Yeah,
it is weird actually that this is a DC or it's going to be a DC book. So I mean, is it going to be in continuity? Is this going to be sort of fit into the DC universe?
No.
Weird. I mean, one of the characters named Connor. I feel like that's a bit messy. If we've got enough Connors running around.
True, Connor Hawk, Connor Kent, our Connor.
Yeah, too many Connors. We have our anthology book for October for Halloween. It's called Satanic Panic, which is a good title. To be fair, all these holiday themed anthology one shots they do have had pretty good titles for a good number of years at this point. They tend to give me a chuckle. I stopped trying to read them years ago, but the titles give me a chuckle.
The 80 pages is a tough ask, especially when we read as much as we do.
Yeah. Just adding that on to the rest of the week's just a bit too much.
But I do think that they're killing it with the titles.
Get Teen Titans Go issue 7, and that pretty much wraps up the single issues. We got some facsimiles and whatnot. And then for collections, we have Absolute Martian Manhunter Volume 1, which is both softcover and hardcover. We have Justice League Unlimited World's Finest, We Are Yesterday, both hardcover and softcover as a crossover. We got that current Zatanna series in both formats. We have Last Halloween in both formats. We have Robin and Batman Jason Todd in both formats, and because that's only 3 issues, so that's out relatively quick comparatively to most things. We have Green Lantern Corps Volume 1 New World Rising, which is just softcover. Sorry for the people who want the hardcovers of that. You got Batman Brave and the Bold Across the Universe trade. We have a Batman R.I.P. Absolute Edition. Which, yeah. This is always weird to me, because sometimes I feel like, obviously there's great standalone series in DC, right? And they sell very well in individual big formats like this. But to me, this is taking 3 episodes of the middle of a TV show and putting them out in their own. Like, this is part of a run. This isn't a standalone story, but hey, whatever. It sells, so they're going to do it. We got Absolute Day Tripper coming. Yep. We got Why the Last Man, Unmanned DC Comics Compact Edition. That's a mouthful, but it's basically the first 2 trades or the first deluxe hardcover in terms of content, but in a softcover format. V for Vendetta Compact Edition, DC's Finest Events, Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, DC's Finest Super Friends, The Fury of the Super Foes, DC's Finest War, The Big Five Arrive, Injustice God Among Us Compendium 2, we have Secret Six by Gail Simone Omnibus Volume 2, which I presume is the end of it, because I don't think it went that long to need a third. Super Sons, The Compendium Collection, Book 2. Superman or Worlds at War Omnibus Volume 1, Prelude to War. So, yeah, whole nice big chunk of Superman there. We have Human Target by Tom King and Greg Smallwood, the deluxe edition. So that seems like a winner to get if you like that book. There's The Warlord by Mike Grell Omnibus Volume 1. So, that's an interesting one.
I like that cover. Done on pencil.
We have The Wake, new edition, new printing. This is the Scott Snyder and Sean Murphy horror book that they did at Vertigo about 10 or so years ago.
I forgot this book existed till right now.
So did I. And then New Teen Titans, The Judas Contract Deluxe Edition. Much like Batman R.I.P., I'm like, this is part of a ongoing run. This feels weird to me to just read this on its own, but, you know, whatever. So they're putting that out as a deluxe. And that wraps up the Solicits, everyone. And we're at the 37-minute mark of the record, and that's pretty good. Usually we're like an hour or so for the end of the Solicits.
Yeah?
I fired through that. Yeah. God damn it. Yeah, also just a teensy bit of news. I'll just mention it, but the Deadpool and Batman like one-shots, they're going to have backups by other creators pairing up other characters. So just want to mention that. You got Daredevil and Green Arrow, you got Krypto and Jeff. That's Jeff the Land Shark, for those of you who are not familiar with the Marvel character. But yeah. So, and interestingly, Kelly Thompson's listed as one of the creators, which means she may actually be writing Jeff the Land Shark again after creating Jeff the Land Shark, even though she's writing from the DC side.
Coming to see, check in on her baby.
Yeah, it's so funny. So funny. It's so funny that this first main one shot is Zeb Wells. Like, Marvel put Zeb Wells on their side of it, and then DC put Grant Morrison on their side. It kind of feels a little imbalanced there to me, but hey, I don't know. Was Hickman busy? Marvel?
So, like, we don't know what Hickman does. He does mad science in the lab. He's doing something. We just left him alone.
Yeah, apparently. Alright, there you go. That's the Solicits and that little tidbit of news. So, we will get on to the many, many books of the week. Detective Comics 1098, Tom Taylor writing with Lee Garbett on the art. So, cliffhanger from last issue was Batman looking for Bullock, who'd been taken by Elixir, but he instead found the Penguin in the truck that he was tracking. And that's where we pick up this issue. So we get kind of an interesting team up here where Penguin ends up tagging along with Batman as Batman's going to try and save Bullock, because if he leaves Penguin on his own behind in Wolf Country, Penguin might die and he might actually feel bad about that. So he has him tag along. And it is played for kind of laughs where Batman's about to leave him and Penguin's like, oh, what if I get attacked by a bear? And there's like 3 identical panels of Batman, and you see Penguin in the rear view mirror, and he's just like, what was it?
Picolistan.
Picolistan. That's a made up place, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's made up. Picolistan doesn't have bears, and then there's just like the panel again with no bubbles, and then the panel for a third time with a new speech bubble, just him saying it does have wolves, and then Next page, Penguin sitting in the passenger side of the truck that he's hijacked. So I don't know. There's a good comedy beat there that I enjoyed.
Well, and then it's followed up with another comedy beat where Bruce has his finger up to his ear because Oracle's calling him, and then Penguin's like, a lot of people in my circle think you just talk to yourself and cover it by putting your hand up to your ear. I thought that was funny too.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of bits like that, because later on when Batman's using his tech to take out all the surveillance, like all the security cameras, Penguin's like sitting next to him going, oh, I have to remember you have this technology.
Yep.
And Batman's like, I'll adapt. So no, it made for an entertaining duo, if you will.
Yeah, this is the most I've liked Penguin since the Penguin series that Tom King did. Like you couldn't. I don't think it's that difficult to make a likable Penguin.
To be fair, I don't think there's been much Penguin in between these two things, Matt. To be fair, it's not like there's been tons of Penguins that you've been like, oh, this is a shit Penguin, or this is a boring Penguin.
No, but it's just the fun of the character. He's not just the scary crime boss, right? They're approaching him with a bit of wry sense of humor, and I do like that. It bounces off of Bruce really well.
Yeah, notably, Oracle does say, hey, I looked into some of these names that Bullock managed to get in his file and found photographs of them meeting Ra's al Ghul like 80 years ago or whatever it is.
Yep.
Or 100 years ago. It's 1924. Jeez, I'm forgetting it's 2025. Time is a fickle thing.
Here's the thing. I wasn't going to correct you. I just agreed. And then it hit me too. I was like, oh no, that is, oh God.
Yeah, it's 100 years.
Time.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, that makes some sense. If Elixir are finding ways to stay immortal, then it makes sense that they've at least shared a bed once or twice with a certain demon's head. But so that's teasing things for the future. We see Bullock be basically tortured by these Elixir members, and Bullock, of course, is a defiant shit because, well, he's Bullock, right? He's not going to give anything up too easy. So there's a fun beat here, actually, where the main guy, Ambrose, is like, hey, he's this torture dude here is very good. And the torturer's like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy watching you suffer because you're so stubborn. And then they hear like some gunshots from the outside, presumably because Batman's intervening in some way. And Bullock just says, oh, like, because one of them screams, who's there? And Bullock's like, oh, I'm going to enjoy watching you suffer. So I really like that little payoff. Like, this was a really fun, well-paced issue. And I think one of the things that I liked about it is that the plot just very naturally kept moving to the next thing. Everything just naturally flowed to the next part, which is going to be very different to another book that I talk about this week where I felt the opposite. Just, like, okay, so you got Batman and Penguin, and there's a sort of odd couple team up. We cut to Bullock, which is what their goal is. And then we sort of have, like, the people in the room react to the fact that Batman might be outside. And then we go to what's happening with Batman, where he's sent the truck in to distract them, but he's going in the back with Penguin. Like, everything just sort of neatly flows on to the next thing, bit to bit. So, all very good. So...
The way that Garbett plays with the shadows with Batman, right? So everything with the elixir and the frontal assault, everything's bright and lit up. And then we get around with Penguin and Bruce, and just the way that the shadows fall. And, they're almost like they're... Not that they're their own character, but they make the scene feel more moody. It gives it a different vibe than that, action-y kind of stuff that we were seeing.
Yeah, no, there's just... Like, I think the layouts aren't that kind of, like, wacky, but there is, like, one moment where Batman grabs Penguin, and he's just kind of doing it from behind the action underneath him where Batman's grappling away. It's like, popping out of his back, almost. So there's a sense of flow to it and whatnot. And then they get in, it's all very shadowy, there's not a lot of dialogue, it's all very quiet. Big 2-page sort of layout for a fight scene as he gets to Bullock. And of course, Bullock's headbutted the torturer at this point, so it's like, oh, he barely needed any help. But yeah, because the torturer though hit the silent alarm, Elixir are preparing outside. Like, Reese or Ambrose has got like all of his like soldiers ready. They're telling them to come out and surrender, and it's like, okay, well, we have to deal with this. And Penguin picks up a gun, and Batman's like, nope, not a chance. Here, you have this, and hands him an umbrella, which he makes a dig about that being a stereotype. And Bullock grabs his gun. So they try and go outside, and Bullock uses the torturer like as a sort of as a hostage, a shield, if you will.
Human shield. Yeah.
And says, "Hey, everyone, put your guns down, or like your guy's going to get it, or whatever." And seemingly, what Bullock's not predicted here, and I don't think Batman's predicted it either. Although I think Batman realizes in the moment of hesitation after he makes this yell. That he realizes that Elixir do not care, and they will shoot through their guy to get to Bullock. So the big cliffhanger to the issue is that Bullock has been shot because he's standing behind this other guy who they've quite happily just machined bullets into. So good cliffhanger. Obviously I think Bullock's very likable here. I think this is such an odd trio of characters to be together, Batman, Penguin, and Bullock, but honestly so far it's proven pretty entertaining. I can't really complain.
Yeah, I like that Bullock has the guy, he's like, hey, our friend here's 130, if you want him to see 131, let's do it. And then they just, there's a bit of hesitation by the guy that wears the red glasses. I forget his name.
Ambrose, I think. I mean, I could be misremembering that, but I think.
I thought Ambrose was the torturer.
Was it?
Hold on. I might have had him flipped. It doesn't matter, but yes, you're right. It's Dr. Burton is the torturer. But anyways, just the hesitation there with Bruce in the middle, and then, the bullets. So I'm wondering if this is how we're going to see how Elixir responds. Like, are they these immortal guys? Do they have to do a process? Are they going to do it for Bullock? Right? As like a leverage type thing. But yeah, it's a hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, no. It flowed very well. I liked how focused it was. It never deviated to a B plot. Everything fed into what was going on. Even there's a little bit of setup for teasing the backstory of Elixir by having the Oracle information, but even that's still in the context we're trying to find Bullock. Can you track where the other thing went and blah blah blah. Everything just flows on to the other. There's no fat on the issue to me. It felt perfectly paced. I know some older comic book fans don't like the pacing of modern comics. They like what it was like in the 70s and 80s, where there was a lot more stories squeezed into each issue. But for me, this is the type of pacing that I really like. There's definitely issues that go too decompressed. I think this is exactly the pacing that I like out of a comic book.
Fits what the story that they're trying to tell, right? Is Bruce is trying to figure out what's going on with Elixir. Now he's in this foreign country, and his main goal is to get to Bullock. So it's constantly moving forward because that's what Bruce is doing. Yeah. And again, it fits.
There's momentum. That's a good way of putting it. There's a lot of momentum in it, yeah.
So, and with, because if this was a slower detective story, we have to, trace down where Bullock and stuff went, I don't think it would land as much. But the fact that it's very action-oriented, and like you kept saying, it flows from one scene to the other. Very, very good on both the writer and the artist part.
Yeah, and obviously that panel where the gunshots are fired in the last page is red, which very, very much stands out in contrast because every other panel in that page is very blue and black and very muted. And notably, the only other hint of red is in the sunglasses of Ambrose, which actually, in a weird way, foreshadows the gunfire. Just in a color thematic sense. The only red before the gunshots is in his glasses, which is basically just the art telling you he's willing to take the shots. So, no, really cool stuff. What are you giving Detective Comics?
I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I find it hard to... I certainly don't want to go any lower than that. Yeah, I'm almost willing to give it a 9. I think I'll stick to the 8.5. Just because it's not doing anything spectacular on an emotional level. Yeah. But it's a great issue. Taylor's really finding his footing in his detective run. Now that we're out of all that Joe Chill stuff that was murkying up the first arc. Yeah. We're just in happy land now, which is good. All right, Superman Unlimited issue 2, Dan Slott writing with Rafael Albuquerque on the art. So, issue 1 of this was pretty solid, honestly, given all the expectations of Dan Slott coming on board, and you know what I vaguely remember from reading some of his Spider-Man back in the day. Sadly, I do think this is a weaker issue and does remind me of how his Spider-Man used to read. And it's kind of the opposite of what I was saying about Detective Comics, in that there isn't that much of a flow to this. It kind of feels awkwardly paced, and like the ending in particular really made me feel that way. Where like the last page with I need to go at the end of the book to see it, but at the end of the issue, like there's like a little moment with Clark and Jack Ryder like in a bar, and Clark says something which makes Jack Ryder laugh, and it's kind of played off as the end of the scene, and it just goes to like the epilogue page, which is teasing like a villain for next time, and it just didn't feel like the end of something to me. It felt like it did not feel like the end of a scene, and it's just there's just little things like that throughout, which I think made this feel a lot more stilted compared to the first issue, and you know, it's not that I didn't like the book. Like, I still think the story, for the most part, and what they're doing with the concepts is still pretty interesting. But it definitely felt a bit more, from what I remember from reading some of his Spider-Man, it reminded me more of how Dan Slott's writing in that read, which is that it doesn't have the greatest flow in the world and the greatest structure in the world. So, I don't know how you feel. How did you feel about this issue?
So I like it, but I feel like Slott's got a lot of ideas and not a lot of space to put them in. So he's just throwing a whole bunch of stuff out there. And I'm sure eventually it'll come together, because there's ideas that I do like. I just how many months was Clark in that coma? I know they said in here, but I read this first this week.
It was like 3, I think, something like that.
Yeah, so like for over 3 months, this entire nation has built itself up out of kryptonite and stuff, and they have their own daily planet globe that's going up, right? Which that's another idea that the Galaxy Broadcasting has put these daily planet globes in all these major cities as like a symbol of the news and whatever, and they're getting their own made completely out of kryptonite. And I have a lot of questions about this country, city, whatever it is, city state, and how it's been built up so big. Well, in those 3 months that Clark was gone.
I wouldn't worry about that, because they're clearly going to focus on this country and, like, you know, what it is and how this guy kind of like built it up out of the crypt. Like, I feel like this is stuff that they're going to be exploring.
Of course, and that's the stuff that the ideas that he has, that they're going out there, and I'm glad that I have those questions. But then, you know, to throw the creeper in here, it feels like the pacing completely changes. Yeah, right? We're getting into all this stuff we're getting all this stuff with Lois asking questions and whatever, and then we get to Jack Ryder and his whole thing, and you know, if Slott was trying to say a thing about the difference in the news and the type of news that Ryder gives, which is like this tabloidy, talking head pointed, you know, kind of what we're used to in the news nowadays, opinion masquerading as fact type stuff. But I don't feel like that's what we're getting. Right, it's just an excuse to get the creeper in here. Well,
I don't know. It's hard to say yet, because we don't really know where he's going with it. I will say, like, transitioning from Lois in this country, you know, where there's an attack, and we get to see how like this leader, who has been referred to as the Kryptonite King by his people. So there's a bit of a question of like, is he kind of like, you know, is he taking over this country in a way where he's gotten rid of democracy? Is there more stuff going on here? He kind of shrugs it off as like, oh no, it's just a nickname, it doesn't mean anything. But he's got these knights that are wearing kryptonite armor that take on these like terrorists that try and attack. So that's the whole thing that plays out. And you know, I did feel it when we transitioned from that to like the like, oh, Jack Ryder's doing his like weird like radio talk show thing, and he's interviewing this farmer who thinks that kryptonite in the water supply has led to changes in her two-headed goats, which, you know, and they do make a point here of like saying something I think about news and fact checking, because the whole bit here is that Clark like kind of interrupts the show because Daily Planet now own this you know, entire broadcast thing. Clark comes in and says, "Hey, just to do some fact checking mid thing here. Those goats are easily 2 years old, and the kryptonite's only been around for 3 months, so they couldn't possibly be affected by that." And then the lady reveals that she wasn't claiming that the goats became two-headed because of the kryptonite. They were always a two-headed goat. Their eyes are just a bit more green because of the kryptonite, and that's the bit. It's it's fine. Like I think the point gets across. I did think that the Creeper subplot, because Jack Ryder becomes Creeper and ends up like getting involved in the other stuff that happens in the next scene. That stuff felt like, okay, I guess we're doing this now, and I get that you're not going to introduce Jack Ryder and not do Creeper stuff, otherwise what's the point? But I did feel like it was very suddenly where we're doing this whole like Creeper like element to this, when I don't think he was teased in the first dish. Maybe he was. Maybe there was a small tease of him. I don't remember. But the whole thing here is that these villains are robbing a bank and they're prepared with kryptonite bullets when Superman shows up. So they shoot him a couple times. I did like the little bit of writing here where Superman says that, yeah, obviously he can still maybe dodge the kryptonite bullets, but the problem is that as soon as the bullet leaves the chamber, he's already feeling the effect of the kryptonite, and it does kind of make it tough for him to do so. I like that detail. I also like the detail that the kryptonite bullets are very, very expensive, so they only shoot him with a couple, and then they pull out kryptonite brass knuckles. Well, they're not brass, but you know what I mean. But,
yes.
a kryptonite
a knuckle
knife.
duster, if you will.
Yes.
Also, the fact that Clark is so used to making himself a target that just when the guns bolt, he makes himself bigger, right? Because he doesn't want the bullets to go into the crowd, right?
Yeah.
They're always aiming at him. So I did like that Slott had added some of that type of stuff in.
No, there's good details kind of dispersed in there for sure. Yeah, and then so obviously the cliffhanger last time, which up to this point in the book hadn't really addressed yet, which was what was that weird gold look that Superman had at the end of the first issue? Yeah. What were they teasing there? So it turns out this is kind of like a new power that's cropped up for some reason, where if he's exposed to kryptonite for a few minutes, right, or whatever it is, however long it takes to trigger it, all of the energy in his body, all of the solar energy basically forms this gold shield, but it will only last for about 3 minutes. Right? 200 seconds was the exact time I think they gave. Yep. Because it flashes back to them talking about it at the end of last issue.
On the Watchtower.
Yeah. So we get this sort of definition here of how this works. So I do appreciate that there is like limitations to this. It's not just like he's just fine for forever. In fact, not only is he not just fine forever because he's got this gold like solar shield that he now employs. I do like that after the shield is gone, after those 3 or so minutes, he's completely vulnerable because all of his powers are gone. I thought that was an interesting little thing to throw in because it's like, okay, it's kind of like, in fact, actually, there's something I want to complain about here, right? Because I was about to say it feels very video gamey, where you get invincibility for a minute, but then it goes away and you're more vulnerable.
Yep.
Superboy makes that reference, right? Connor makes a reference to this, which I thought was fine, right? I thought, when they're explaining to Clark how this works, what happens when everything runs out, and I'm out of juice. Connor says, then you need to collect another 100 gold rings. I thought that's a fine reference. It's a little pop culture reference, but it makes clear how this works, that he has to recharge with solar energy. The problem is that for some reason Dan Slott decided that he wanted to make 2 references in the same speech bubble, so he then does it again and references Mario in the same bubble.
Yep.
It's an equally
pick one.
It's an equally fine reference, but there's absolutely no reason for 2 of them. It feels so clunky having both of them. So that really irked me and stood out to me.
It's pick one. It's a hat on a hat. Like we already got the point.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's indulgent, I guess. It's just indulgent.
Yeah, but I do like that they point out that it might be a mutation from his supernova, right? When he would, because same thing would happen. He would go do that supernova and go get overloaded, and then he would be vulnerable for a short time after. Because for the same reason, his cells would use up all the solar energy until he could absorb more. So, the fact that they point that out, that it could be a mutation, we're not sure. We still got to track what exactly is going on.
Yeah. So yeah, we see him turn into gold and like take out the robbers quite quickly. And it runs out just as he finishes punching them, but there is the one super villain chick left who's ready to fight him again.
Out.
And he basically just like says, "Really, you're going to try this again?" He basically just bluffs, and she stands down because she thinks that he's still, Superman or whatever. Yeah. However, Creeper inadvertently reveals to the world that he is vulnerable after this gold shield's been up, because he decides to shoot him with a pea shooter or whatever, like when you shoot the straw thing at someone. And it Superman reacts to it. He grabs his neck and goes ow when it hits him. And it just so happens that some vlogger, some Instagram, TikTok person is filming with their phone and basically just deduces, hey, I guess Superman's pretty weak and just as human as everyone else after that gold shield's been activated. So Creeper's like, oh no, I might be going to hell for that one, because he's inadvertently just told the entire world that there's going to be times now where Superman is completely vulnerable as anyone else. I mean, I did think his reaction to it was funny. So I'm curious what the end game is here with Creeper as like a recurring like supporting character, but it was definitely a clunky like insertion of him, I think, for the first half of this issue.
For sure. Him slinking away and the way that he does. I think Albuquerque does the facial expressions really well. But yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I like... Yeah, Albuquerque's art is obviously very good. It's very interesting a choice for Superman, I still think, because I don't know if it necessarily lends itself to Superman's kind of like vibe and style all the time. But I can't deny that the sequencing and the like you say, like Creeper slinking away the way he does because he knows he's in trouble is all very good and entertaining. So so anywho,
and well, I like the warmness of his colors, right? Because I usually associate Albuquerque with all the dark and the shadows and like the American Vampire stuff. But here at the bar, everything has like this warm glow washing over it. And we still get some purples and, so some of those mixed in. But I will say, just like that whole vibe of this warm bar called the Bronze Swan, where the bartender's name is Kurt, got to be a reference to Kurt Swan, the famous Superman artist. It's something that I wouldn't expect out of Albuquerque, and he just nails it.
Yeah, you still see some classic Albuquerque colors though in those Creeper pages before. When it's just Creeper,
for sure.
There's those cold palette where it's like, oh, this looks like it could just be a page from American Vampire. If you just put some fangs on him, it would look very American Vampire.
He is very Skinner-esque, right?
Yeah.
With the facial expressions. So.
Yeah. So the final page though, which is teasing some bigger stuff. You've got the leader of the country talking about his kryptonite and all the rest of it. Seemingly he's working with a new version of Toyman. That's what the final page is revealing. Also, that final joke that made Jack Ryder laugh is Clark does posit the kryptonite's worth more money than the gold they were stealing, so why not just go sell the kryptonite and not take the gold? But obviously, the idea that kryptonite for a villain is very useful because they can use that on Superman. So,
or any of the Kryptonians, right? Like, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, because
Clark.
It looks like Toyman has been paid off with kryptonite bars here at the end of the issue. Just to point that
out. Also, Clark goes into the bar and orders the Clark Kent special, which is a gin and tonic. Hold the gin. So he says, "Type of maniac just drinks tonic water." Like, if I'm looking at Clark Kent and he's just drinking tonic water, I'm asking him what's up and if he's okay.
Yeah,
And
I was just reminding myself what the leader of the country was actually wanting Toyman to do. He wants Toyman to silence the people who are starting to question if they should be using kryptonite in the way it is. Like, because it is brought up at one point in the issue on the Jack Ryder show. Isn't kryptonite eventually dangerous to everyone? And yeah, like, and at least in the past, like, there's been a storyline where Lex got cancer because he was too exposed to kryptonite. At least in the animated shows, anyway. I don't know if that was ever in the comics, but it's definitely been something that's come up before. Is this idea that it is eventually harmful to humans in some way?
Yeah, kryptonite radiation still affects people. Like we've seen that in different things. So, and here the glow that's coming off of the suitcase is very Pulp Fiction-esque, right? So it seems like it's radiating something onto Toyman. Which is the doll version of Toyman, which I don't know if he's a robot or what. Like, I'm kind of unfamiliar.
Well, Toyman will be fine though, because he's not the one opening the case. He's using one of his toys to do it. So he's actually one of the few people who might not be making himself sick. He's using an avatar, so he's fine. Anyway, so I mean, just like, I still kind of like the ideas that Slott's playing with here, and I'm still kind of into the overall like direction it's going in for now. But I did think this issue was a bit clunkier in its pacing. I thought the Jack Ryder kind of stuff felt like a weird kind of like insertion at the start. Obviously, by the time you get to the end, he's been kind of there the whole book, so it doesn't feel like weird anymore. But when it first cut to his radio show, and like, it wasn't just like a, because I thought it was going to be like, oh, it's going to be one page of like some world building, like he's going to mention some stuff about how kryptonite's being used, and we'll hear a couple of little bits of vanilla about the world right now. But instead it went on for a few pages, and we did the whole thing with the goats, and then Creeper comes into it like a few pages later, and I'm like, oh, we're really going heavy on Creeper in this story then. So yeah, we'll see. But this country that's built its entire place up out of kryptonite is an interesting concept, and be very curious to see what happens when something pops up where Superman might actually have to go there for some reason, and how he tries to like work around the obvious limitations that would come with.
Look, we know he still has the Superman robots, right? Just send them.
Maybe that's simple. I don't know.
Yeah, that's all.
All right, what are you rating Superman Unlimited?
I mean, it was a straight 7.
Yeah, that sounds a bit fair to me. I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff here, but just a little clunkier in the execution. So 7 out of 10. Wonder Woman issue 22, legacy number 822. Tom King writing with Caitlin Yarsky on the art. So we're not quite back in Sempier yet. That's coming soon. And I guess this is because, well, this is part of what we're doing with Mouse Man. This is a flashback issue to the first time, seemingly, that Diana and Steve, for that matter, encountered Mouse Man, and the attack of the giant mice on the White House, which is
or the Capitol.
Or is it the Capitol? Sorry, I did it all the time.
It's the Capitol, yes.
I always mix those up for some reason.
You're fine.
So this is an amusing issue. It definitely felt like it tonally was in the realm of what some of the main story's done. Obviously, the main story in this book has been a lot darker and more serious with the Sovereign stuff, but it does have its moments of levity, particularly with the Wonder Girls and characters like that. I think this all being built around it's the morning after Steve and Diana have had sex for the first time, and he feels a little weird and insecure that she sort of left before he woke up. So there's a lot of like reacting to the giant mice that are attacking the Capitol, and also him trying to bring up, hey, that was nice last night, can we like see each other again? And that's what the issue's doing. It's kind of bouncing between those two things, and it's a lot of Steve reacting to the fact that there's giant mice. And just some nice bits like Diana saying, no, don't shoot the mice, it's not their fault, they don't deserve to be shot, and Steve not quite understanding. But there's a nice little payoff to that, because a couple of pages later, when someone else is going to shoot a mouse, Steve jumps in and yells, no shooting the mice. And I found that quite endearing and funny, because like he's already like taken to heart everything she said to him, which is quite nice.
He is hanging on her every word, right? If you don't get the vibe that he is completely infatuated with her, and not in a creepy way, right? But he is hanging on Diana's every word, and it just makes it feel like a special connection. Because it's the way that he wrestles the gun away from that guy, right?
Did you like Mouse Man riding a giant mouse with a saddle on its back?
It's very funny,
I mean, I can't say I'm very familiar with Mouse Man, but I'm enjoying the general kind of vibe that because it feels like, okay, he's been treated like kind of a joke character. Like, I'm not saying he's quite the Kite Man of Wonder Woman, but it does feel like, hey, there's an inherent silliness to everything that's happening here. And I feel like what they teased in the present day story feels a lot more sinister and a lot more serious. So I'm actually really curious how we transition him from this to that.
So there is a darkness to him, though, because the fact that he's using the mice, right? Like, they're indispensable. But Diana takes time to talk to one of them, and it's a regular sized mouse. And she's like, oh, this is just one of the regular capital mice that lives here. Says that the other ones, what does she say? The other ones have been controlled by a man in a costume. He has ears like hers. And just the way that the mouse is talking to her, this is the closest Diana's ever felt like a Disney princess, right? The way that she's talking. And this was just where this book has been with the type of darkness that we've had around the Sovereign and what he had done to Diana and stuff. Her resetting here with this lightness of her bending down to talk to the mouse and how expressive the mice are. It's definitely, the change in pace is an interesting choice. I feel like this is King going, hey, this might get a bit darker, so enjoy some of the levity while we can.
No, I enjoyed this, and I think the art here, I'm not super familiar with the artist, but she whether it was intentional because it's a flashback story or it's just her style looks like this, but everyone does look a bit younger. Like, Diana looks much younger here than she does in the main, ongoing part of the book. So it works out in that sense. And for the most part, I think the art's quite pleasant. I think those moments of Steve wrestling the gun out of the guy's hand, or the moments of awkwardness when he's trying to bring up the night before, and for both her and Diana are quite good. There's just a couple of moments here or there where, for example, there's a full page spread when Diana comes in right after the gun wrestling moment, where it's a nice enough full page spread, but there is just something a little bit weird about the way her shoulders kind of up in front of her face. It just the posture just feels a little bit weird and unnatural. So there's just a little bit of that, but for the most part, all the mice stuff looks great. Both the big and little mice, the one with the saddle, Mouse Man's delightful over the top outfit.
I also love that as he's talking, right? He's sitting at the dais, however you pronounce it, and there's that mouse that's with him that is just mimicking him, right? So when he slams and says this body's out of order and slams his fist down, the mouse is doing it. And then later when he says, you say that to me, with indignation on his chest, the mouse is it's so funny.
It is, yeah. And it's sort of funny that you might not even notice the first time you look at it, and then you look at the mouse again afterwards. You're like, wait, he's mimicking the mouse is mimicking his movements. Exactly. That is very funny.
And then just the action of Diana, the way that she takes off her tiara and then throws it, and then that's how she takes out Mouse Man. There was just a flow to it that I was like, what is she? Oh, it was like a nice surprise. It's something we've seen her do a couple times. But, this is how she does it. It took even him by surprise.
Yeah. I think that page overall, but especially that panel of him getting hit in the face and his skin all wrinkling up, looks really good. I think it's a good, nice cartoony hit in the face.
Yep.
And Steve's whole thing after this is, well, that just seemed too easy. Like, I've never dealt with a supervillain who controls mice before. I thought it'd be more to it than just one quick hit. And I think that's King kind of setting you up for, it's going to be a lot more complicated in the present day part. Like, this is going to have emasculated Mouse Man so much that he's going to come back with all sorts of fury.
It fits into that's the storyline that he was telling from before about the men and the Amazons and treating them like threat, because initially what Mouse Man's going at is like, the government's controlled by these fat cats, and these fat cats, they're from the big cities, and, foreign money, foreign fat cats, and they're controlling us. And you have these ones that are from Paradise Island, and what are they doing here? What about us? What about the little people? What about us other mice, right? And it's that whole argument that, you're the government is just using you and you're being lied to, and it's what the sovereign had used beforehand. And now,
also, just the fact that he keeps referring to effectively the powers that be as the big cats because he's a mouse, and that works with the whole analogy is funny to me. But I mean, the whole thing here is that he's kind of like touching on the politics of the Amazons being in America, which is obviously something that was talked about before. And just to tie it in completely, at the end of the issue, we see the Sovereign in this time period say that, hey, this whole debacle is going to help us like get this, this law passed that's going to help Amazons come to America. We're going to put a stop to that. Now, clearly, they don't put a stop to it because the whole plot in the present day part of the story was that there are Amazons here, and it all breaks down because of what happens in the story. But I thought it was interesting to link into that, and it does make me wonder if there's any more connections between the Sovereign and Mouseman, or if Mouseman is completely independent in all the things he's been planning and he's up to in the present day stuff. But cool.
I also like this last page with the way like that soft reddish purple light goes over Diana and Steve, right before we get to the Sovereign, right, and him sitting there all creepily with his teacup. I just it makes for this nice little moment. Again, adding levity before it gets too serious.
Yeah, because obviously Steve all being worried that Diana left him in bed, and her not realizing the suggestions that might make of running away, even if there's something important to go do. So there's just a nice awkwardness to it, and then like they kind of both reveal they both want to see each other again, and it's just kind of a sweet thing. And obviously the context now of him already being dead to us makes it a bit bittersweet. So, I like this issue quite a bit. I definitely liked it more in the last two issues, and I think it's a nice primer to get like the classic. Here was the first Mouseman story in continuity, at least as far as this run's concerned, and now we get to see what Mouseman has become. Next time. Like if we had went straight to this issue from that tease, it would have worked maybe even better than having those two fill-in issues. But regardless, we're here now, and we're excited to see where the Mace Men stuff goes, because it's like he's got an army. Of supporters. Because even someone who bases their entire thing on mouse puns can still gain a following by spouting the rhetoric that appeals to a certain group of people.
Yes, and it feels like a certain group of people would take that and make it their entire personality. And so now it took this thing that is pretty harmless and into something that's very dangerous. Yeah,
at least that's the vibe of what we think we're going with it, but we'll find out. So what were you giving Wonder Woman?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think the art is good, just with the odd little awkward pose or whatever. But I think it worked for the story, and I like what it's built into. It was quite sweet and quite funny for the most part. Well, setting some groundwork for what's coming later. So cool. Nightwing 127, legacy number 314. So this issue kind of kicks off a new arc. Obviously, it's still very much following on from where we were before, but by the end of the issue, we kind of like set up a whole new thing. We've got that kid from the Teddies who's kind of wanting to come and help Nightwing, so he kind of breaks into the Titan's Tower, which is where Nightwing is now living with Babs. Or at least he's living there and Babs is always there. I don't know if she's technically living there, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. And you've got Mayor Grayson Lynn. She's like doing a press conference, and she's kind of ready to maybe admit that she made some mistakes by giving Spheric all this power to do what they're doing. So you've got all this set up, and this is all tying into what was going on before in the story. And there's obviously the reference again to the mayor seeing what's her face's real face. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, Olivia Pierce.
There you go, Olivia Pierce. So they tease that, right? And you've got her yelling "help us" before she collapses on TV. So Nightwing's like, shit, I need to go see her. However, right as this is happening, this is when the kid throws the brick in the window downstairs, and they're like, wait a minute, someone's trying to break into the Titans Tower, and Babs is like, I'll take care of this, you go see your sister, it's Titans Tower, I'm a superhero too, I'm fine. So we get this great panel of Nightwing jumping on the the high-rise train. Like, I really loved that panel, and all the speed lines and stuff. But he's rushing off to see his sister, and right as this is happening, we start getting the dual narration, right? And this was genuinely quite weird to me, because I wasn't sure, okay, who's this one with the blue box he's talking? Because it's not Nightwing, because it's someone's talking about Nightwing. And then, of course, you've got the Samnee comes in and starts talking to this other voice. And I did figure it out before it revealed it, but it wasn't yet. It wasn't right now. It took me a few of these pages before I finally clicked who this was.
There was an early part where in the dialogue it gave a dead giveaway, and it made my brain think. And I was like, wait, why would that narration box say that?
Yes.
And then as it's going, it dawned on me when I got to this page. I was like, oh, okay. And then it made me think about the Samnee, and I'm like, oh no, what does this say about this figure? Because going forward. One
of the little touches here that's very good is that these narration boxes I'll just say it's Nightmite, right? Nightmite, they're all normal narration boxes, rectangles. But once the Samnee starts talking to him, the rectangles for Nightmite become sort of wobbly bubbles, right? They become very broken and kind of unstable looking. So it's kind of the Samnee's got a lot of power, it seems like. Yeah. So Nightwing sees his sister in hospital who's in a coma, and he's like, wait, why are all the doctors staring out the window? It's because some grotesque monster from another dimension has completely covered the entirety of Titan's Tower. Which of course is wait, Babs, what the hell? What's going on here? So we get this great page where Pierce is in her limo and her face is in shadow, and then you just see a panel, a close up of her pulling her face down, and I'm like, oh damn, that's so creepy. She's put her face on, literally. She's just put her face on.
I can't think of a writer in recent memory who does creepy as well as Dan Watters. Whether it was the Ten-Eyed Man, whether it's anything in Dark Patterns with the Wound Man, right? Anything so far.
What's so funny, Matt? I was about to say, but what about Dark Patterns? And then you said that, and I was like, oh yes, it's both Dan Watters. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
I'm tired, okay? My brain's not operating to full capacity.
But even that what was that issue with it was during the Nightmares. I think it was the Nightwing issue that dealt with the cosmic horror-y things that Nightwing was dealing with. That was Dan Watters. So yeah, just the creepiness, and especially right here, you cannot see her face.
No.
But then you look down and she's holding her face in her hand. Right? Yeah. And you're like, oh, that is unsettling. So yeah, just
super creepy
across the board.
She's there with Spheric. They're going to start blasting this big monster-looking thing with their laser blasters, and Nightwing shows up and tells them to back off. And she's like, "Hey, Nightwing, we made a suit that can deal with this energy, this interdimensional energy that's this thing's emitting. We've got a suit for you that'll protect you." And that's the suit that he's wearing on the cover. And he's like, "I'm not wearing something you made." And she's like, you're going to have to. If you want to go in there, is there someone in there you care about? Because you might have to go in and get them. So he reluctantly puts it on. So we get him in this kind of more armored looking suit. And he walks up to the monster and it kind of just opens. But when he goes inside, it's not just the geography of the tower. It's okay, this creature is from another dimension. And clearly, since we're talking about Nightmite, we're talking the fifth dimension. Yeah. And it's behind that door, nothing makes sense. The door's just kind of standing in the middle of a hallway. There's space in front of it, even though it should be where the entrance was. And he doesn't really know where he's going now. And then the final page reveals that this monster is basically Nightmite, who's been turned into this by the Samnee, and he his head's at the top, just yelling, "Help me!" And to be fair, Dick Grayson realizes it's him. This sort of coincides with Dick figuring this out. He's like, "What happened to you?" can't you talk to me? And then you just see that final page where he's saying, help me. So I think this is really cool. I think what's especially cool about it is that Dan Waters, it never felt like he wanted to like jettison anything that Tom Taylor set up in his run. Like he kept his sister as the mayor, he kept the Dick and Babs relationship going from where it was, and I really appreciated all that. But I think Nightmite was something that Taylor introduced, so I really love that Dan Waters came in and said, hey, I've got an idea for an arc where someone like messes with Nightmite and like turns him into like a cosmic horror monster that against his will, and it's basically creating this haunted house arc for Nightwing to because I assume Nightwing is going to go through the building now trying to get to like where he can fix all this stuff, and he's probably going to see some weird horrors that are either from Nightmite's like twisted versions of memories or stuff, or maybe some stuff that the Zanny set up for him because the Zanny wants to, you know, manipulate and put stuff in his head. But either way, I thought as far as kicking off a new arc goes seamlessly from the continuing the previous one, I thought this did a pretty great job.
Yeah. So it was early on in the narration when it says, I don't know, it's been like 30 issues. The fourth dimension is kind of hard to keep track of. That's what clicked. I was like, oh, it's Nightmite. What's going on? Had no idea that the Zanny was going to do this. And then just the creepiness of the Zanny saying, let me get to the page where he goes, I've reclaimed this dimension for the Cirque. I am sculpting it, and it should be, hold on. I'm sculpting it as it should be, and if you wish to visit, right, you'll come as you are and let them see you, right? So just this concept of we can't perceive the fifth dimension, right? That's why Mxyzptlk and Batmite, they all take the forms that they do of the imps. And it's almost as if the Zanny triggered something that this is kind of the fourth or the fifth dimensional form of Nightmite, and he's unable to control it. And it's like, well, what kind of power is the Zanny playing with if he's able to do this? You know, and it makes it that much of more of a task for Nightwing. And yeah, man, just Dan Waters doing these type of things in Nightwing that I'm not expecting. Like, I'm used to like the crime aspect and everything that Taylor did with him reshaping the city. That's all very, you know, Dick Grayson-y. But here to add this fifth dimensional rift and sending Nightwing in to go deal with it, you know, that is some new storytelling on Waters' part, and I'm here for it.
I mean, yeah, I think I just like the idea that this feels so different from the first arc. Like, it's continuing on seamlessly, but as soon as like we get all this stuff set up and the issue ends with Nightwing getting into the Titan's Tower, and it's surrounded by interdimensional monstrosities, which it seems to all be one thing, really. It's all just Nightmite who's been mutated and spread out over it against his will. And it's almost like he went to the tower because he needed help. Right, and that's why it's at Titan's Tower. Maybe, yeah. I mean, what I was saying there though is why I don't think this is necessarily what his natural form in the fifth dimension is, because it seems like he's in too much pain, like he's been tortured by being in this form. Well, right, but what if that's because he can't? It does hurt in the fourth dimension. That's why they take the form of the imps and whatever. You know, like he can't have his real form out in this dimension. It's too different. I think that's you taking a leap where nothing suggests that. yeah, maybe. This feels more to me that I mean, I'm not saying that like maybe he is a purple monster that has like 4 eyes and these big teeth, but I don't think he's this big, and I don't think he's like this all spread out like normally. This all feels like he's being like I guess just stretched out like Pinhead's walked in and like hooked some chains into him and like, you know, pulled him apart kind of thing. And again, you say taking the leap, but it's what the Zanny says, right? You'll come as you are and let them see you. Let them see you as you truly are. Right? Yeah, okay, that's not. So what else is that supposed to mean? So that's why. And again, this could be Zanny just messing with him, right? Like, let me show you what you truly are. You know, but he's messed with him because of the Cirque. Because he's forming him, and this is what he thinks, right? But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this issue, and with the stuff with Pierce
and her coming in playing like the hero and shooting him with whatever this energy is, and then when it goes to let Nightwing in, she's like, oh, it's Kappa energy, it must like you. And so she's priming everybody that's sitting there listening of it. So it's all part of this ultimate, whatever their plan is. They're just trying to manipulate everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of the Samnee going after this entity that effectively worships Nightwing, to try and bastardize that idea and kind of get into Nightwing's head by taking this apart, and then not to mention the fact that we have this kid who also got into the tower. So Nightwing and Barbara don't know that. Well, maybe Barbara knows. We don't know what she knows yet because we don't see her after all this stuff kicks off. But this kid's also in the tower, which is also another kind of like wild card that plays. Like, when's this kid going to come into this? So no, I think there's a lot of interesting things being played with here, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So no, excellent stuff, and obviously Dexter Soy's art is a delight per usual. And I think this is like something very different that he gets to draw with all this like monstrosity around the tower. Like, it's so different to anything, because the last arc was all like, oh, it's like RoboCop style mech suits and things like that he gets to draw, as well as the superheroes. This he's like, oh no, now we're doing stuff from beyond. We're doing Lovecraft. We're doing this crazy stuff.
In that panel where Nightwing walks in, the only real right angle is the door. Right? Everything's at a curve, everything's warped, which I associate Dexter stories from very angular art. So the fact that everything's softened here, and it's almost like it's very cartoony in that, where there's, it's like Looney Tunes and Disney, where there's not a lot of harsh angles. It definitely tells us that something is different. But yeah, putting Nightwing in these type of predicaments, I am a fan of, because it also makes me wonder, like, what is it about him besides the circus tie? Why does the Samnee want to do this with him so much? Why is he trying to reclaim him for the Cirque? But yeah.
So no, I'm excited to see where this is going. What are you giving Nightwing?
I'm giving this a 9.
Yep, 9 out of 10. I keep agreeing with you, which is boring, I know, but like,
it is very boring, and it again,
see, the problem is
just we've settled.
Is that, well, it's this thing. It's not even. This is not my fault, but this is your fault, because you've like started rating things properly, so there's not as much of a difference because you've learned how the system works. You used to rate things stupidly.
I know, because rating things is stupid, except on Letterboxd. That's the only valid form. All right, but yes,
rating things is as stupid or as important as you make it yourself. It's up to you. If you treat it like a stupid thing, it'll be a stupid thing. If you treat it with the reverence that it deserves, then it'll be taken as gospel.
This has nothing to do with this show, but I remember doing the David Harbour Hellboy episode with Tim, and him talking how bad the movie was, but he still gave it like an 8. And I'll never forget that. Because it's Hellboy.
What a joke. What a joke of a man he is. All right. Absolute Flash issue 4. Jeff Lemire writing with Al Kaplan on the art. So different art on this issue. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the one that's been a little bit more... follow
me here.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to get step on. Yeah, we're doing that where we're stepping on each other. So follow me here, and I don't mean this as a slight. This feels the most ultimate universe of the Absolute Universe books that there is.
I can see that.
Where we're getting these familiar concepts done in a different way, down to the love interest, down to the some of the swapped villains that are at play here. That said, I did enjoy this issue because we're getting away from him running from the rogues, and we're getting some developments through here. And I liked meeting some of the characters that Wally runs into.
Yeah, I mean, what I was getting at is that this has been the weakest Absolute book, and I think that this issue especially made me realize just how much of those first 3 issues were basically kind of the same. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of advancement. Yeah, obviously they introduced Grodd at the end of issue 2, and we kind of learned about how he's communicating with him in issue 3, but for the most part, it felt like Wally running from the same group of characters in the desert, and it didn't feel like it was doing enough in issue 2 or 3 to feel like it was advancing forward. This one, I think, breaks that a little bit, in a good way, because it does have him start to fill out some supporting cast. It has him interact with some new people. He meets Linda, who's another runaway, because he ends up at this shelter. It didn't occur to me when it was just this guy named Ralph, but when they mentioned that it was Ralph and Sue, I went, oh, wait a minute. As in the Dibneys, okay.
Yep. Well, it's also, Pete, called Dibney Mission. It says on the card that he gives Wally.
I didn't even notice that. I did not.
You didn't read the card. You're just like, you're just reading the speech bubbles.
I didn't read the card.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by it feels like the Ultimate Universe, right? Where it's like, okay, I don't know what the significance of Ralph and Sue's going to be. I don't necessarily think that this is going to be elongated man type stuff, or they're going to be detectives, but there's this couple that is looking out for others that need to be looked out for. And I like that introduction here. I like that, like you said, it's building the supporting cast a little bit.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a nice idea. It was the Linda stuff though that I particularly liked, just because it gave her this big entrance where she kind of comes in and says, because when Ralph's given Wally this sales pitch, hey, come round to this youth shelter we run, and he's like, you kind of look like a serial killer. Linda walks past and says, no, like, you have to put up with his dad jokes, but it's in all right place. And then, of course, they end up sitting together at one point during lunch and kind of, banding backwards and forwards a little bit. And there's a little bit of chemistry. I think the art does a good job of just a little smirks. Clearly of him kind of like clearly being a little bit more in awe of her as she walks away, and she calls him Wallace because she thinks the name Wally's stupid. I thought it was interesting because it was like, for some reason, even though it's the most obvious thing in the world, I don't think it occurred to me that we might be doing Linda stuff in this anytime soon. So I think them meeting each other when they're both teenagers is kind of an interesting spin on stuff. So I like that stuff. The stuff with the rogues and like Wally's dad being pissed at them for what they're up to and failing to bring his son back is just kind of whatever. It's more of the same for the most part. Perhaps the more interesting part though is when we see that he's answering to someone. A Dr. Thawne, not an Eobard Thawne, but an Eleanor Thawne, who seems to think that, like, oh, Wally's not a teenager anymore. He's like an asset now because he's something's happened to him with these experiments. So we kind of have this conflict now where obviously Wally's dad's main concern is getting him back safe and maybe undoing whatever's happened to him. Whereas I think she wants to get him to use him, to experiment on him, to test him, to do whatever weird plan she's got. So obviously, I think the genius of having Eleanor Thawne is that it doesn't rule out that there will be an Eobard Thawne at some point, but it does mean that we're doing, some stuff with that name up front. And of course, they also reveal here that they've got a bunch of shady experiments going, and we see broken like tanks named Project Heatwave, Project Wizard, which I assume is Weather Wizard, Project Firestorm, and then there's one that's just Project XXXXX, which I assume is just something they don't want to tell us yet.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And yeah, so they also reveal that they're tracking Grodd. They can track him, and Grodd runs away from the mission during the night. So Wally goes chasing him into the sewer, and the end of the issue is that because Grodd's got a connection psychically with all these other experiments, he's led Wally to Heatwave, seemingly. And Heatwave in the Absolute Universe looks like he's a walking, melting lava man, is the best way I can describe him. That's the final page, is the full page reveal of him. I think this is the best. I think this is the best issue of this so far. I think the pacing's better. I think the supporting cast add a lot to it, and it really felt like it wasn't just watching Wally like be confused as he runs through the desert or the caves like for like most of the issue. And I think the cliffhanger of Heatwave here is kind of giving me a little bit of what I like in the other Absolute books, is that I think this is a really cool, grotesque version of this character. So I'm excited to see kind of what they do with it, because it's a bit more horrifying in the same way that Absolute Brainiac's a bit more horrifying, or Absolute Bane's more monstrous, or whatever.
I didn't get to talk about it last week, but Ultimate Bane saying, I'm not even using the Venom yet. And then when he does, it's just the grotesque, like, John Carpenter's The Thing-esque thing that happens to his body. Yeah. I was just like, oh my god. Yeah, I hear Thawne, or Eleanor Thawne, mentions, like, that was under contract with Lazarus, right? Yeah, and so it's like, well, wherever you're getting these powers from, right, you know, and it seems here that Wally's dad just wants to, at the end of the day, he's looking out for his son. Like, yes, he's kind of a stern a-hole, but that's still his son, and he wants to get him back safely.
Yeah. Okay, I'll make a prediction. I think Wally's dad is going to die at the end of this arc. Or soon after.
Something like that. And I was worried about Grodd being, like, you know, still being a villain and working with these guys, but no, it seems like he has it. That Grodd cares about the other projects, if you will, and that's why he's tracking them, because you know, he keeps saying hot over here needs help, right? You know, so it doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just trying to round him up. It seems like Grodd is caring, and they're using that to its advantage. It never felt like a villain reveal. This wasn't like, oh, Grodd's evil. It's more just that he naturally wants to seek out the others. And like you say, the way he words it makes it feel like he wants to help Heatwave. Now, whether or not we end up with an absolute Batman situation where some of these rogues end up like friends to Wally because he helps them, I don't know if we're going down that route. It may be more of a tragic thing where he tries to, but like there's no help in him because Heatwave's just too far gone. I don't know. Yeah. The possibilities are kind of open there, but no. I think, you know, the introduction of all these supporting cast members, and I was thinking about how, like, you know, if Wally's dad does catch up to him and he is more forgiving and is like, hey, son, I'm sorry about this, and this, I'm like, well, obviously we still want to keep progressing his relationship with Linda, and it makes sense to maybe have, like, you know, we've introduced Ralph and Sue Dibney, that we're going to be having them as allies in some form, maybe not as heroes, but as like foster kind of parents that are looking out for people. I feel like Wally's dad is probably going to die, and Wally is still going to need all these new people that he's met. I think we're setting all these people up because he's still going to need them in the long run. Yeah, and that means that Wally's dad is probably going to die, and possibly in a way to save his son. Maybe he's going to, like, you know, make sure they don't get him by throwing himself in front of some beam or something. I don't know. Well, and that goes in with the idea of the Flash family. The Flash being like this, you know, and here it'll be a Flash found family. That these are the people that Wally wants to surround himself with when he has no one else, right? And his actual family, because it really leans heavy at the beginning on his mom. And kind of this guilt that he feels about her being dead, you know, because he's dreaming and about the funeral and the ground, and, you know, that's where she's going to be forever.
Notably turns into him dreaming that Barry's asking for help in his dream, which maybe lands some credence. That I know some people are thinking Barry might not be completely dead, and this might be like, oh, Barry's maybe trying to contact him through his dreams. Maybe he's in the Speed Force or whatever version we have of the Speed Force in this world. So. Yeah, maybe Barry's not gone for good, is a fair thing to suggest at this point, to be honest.
So, and then this artist I'm not that familiar with, but some of the stuff works really good. Now, Robles's art in the first three is very action oriented, it's very clean, but here there's a lot more of these emotional beats. Like there's a panel where Wally and Grodd do like this little head bump, and he says, "Wally, okay." Wally and Grodd, okay, and it really lands with the style of art here because of the expressiveness, and just the stuff too with the body language of Wally when Ralph's talking to him, where he goes, "Do I look like a serial killer?" And he's just like, "Kind of," you know. There's just this wryness that's told through the art, and I just feel like, not that Robles can't, but it was a nice change up, and it made it feel like fresh. And you had mentioned it felt like we did 3 issues to do one, you know, this one same thing. And here there's already been so much movement. I think a lot of that has to do with the emotion at play. Yeah, the change of pacing is a big part of it, and I think the art change helps with that change of pacing. Not that I don't want the other artists back, but I just think that it can't be constant running around like it was, or it felt that way anyway.
in the last couple issues. Here, I think it did a lot more to set up like a more world around Wally. It's not just him on his own feeling lost, because that was starting to feel a bit old, and it'd only been 3 issues.
Yeah.
So no, best issue of this book so far, honestly. I'm feeling a little bit better about it. It's probably still at the bottom of the absolute books for me, because there's a lot of competition in that space, but I don't think the gap's as wide as it was before. So yeah, what are you giving Absolute Flashback?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
Yeah, I'm agreeing again. I know it's boring, but
damn. 8 out
of 10 for Absolute Flash issue 4. All right, Batman Superman World's Finest issue 40. Mark Waid writing with Adrián Gutiérrez on the art. So, we're back to business as usual on World's Finest after the crossover. It's not technically done yet, because there's still one more in Unlimited, but World's Finest is back to just its regular stuff. So this is just a story about a big monster showing up and Batman having a Megazord-sized Batbot ready to fight the damn thing.
Yeah, a Bat Jaeger, if you will.
Yes, a Bat Jaeger. But the real heart of this story is that Jim Gordon is going on this talk show in Metropolis to talk about Gotham, and Perry White's there. So this story is actually more about the fact that we get to see Jim Gordon and Perry White meet each other and interact and kind of see each other's strengths. And, you know, obviously there's some overlap there because, you know, it's investigative journalism and detective work is there's definitely some stuff there. And I mean, Gordon even has a little moment where he says nice detective work to Lois, which is also a nice little beat. And that's really the main point of this issue, is to have this stuff and also have the moment where, because keep in mind, this is set in the early days of the universe. The moment where Bruce asks Lois out in front of Clark and Clark like turns and gives him a dirty look because Lois doesn't know that either of them are Batman or Superman, but they both know who each other are. So that's really funny. Now, admittedly, of all things, I think it's the first Hush that has a moment like this in it.
Okay.
I think it's Hush, but there's a moment in a story from around that time where Bruce asks Lois out on a date and Lois doesn't know he's Batman, and they're in the Daily Planet and Clark sticks his head above the cubicle and just sort of like glances at him, kind of like this, where he's like, Bruce, you dick, what are you doing? And it kind of felt like that kind of moment here to me, but it's a funny joke. It works.
The smugness on Bruce's face when he looks over, right, and just the eye dart, you know, that really got me. This is, I mean, that's why it's funny. It's because Bruce knows what he's doing. He is doing this just to get a reaction out of Clark, and that is what makes it funny. So, like, parts of this issue are quite enjoyable. I will say though, I am starting to get a little sick of like so many Mark Waid stories, starting with characters are hanging out, and then some big villain or monster just shows up out of nowhere, and they have to react to it. I feel like so many stories in this book in particular, but even his Action Comics issue from last week, well, I liked quite a lot of it, was still guilty of this, where it's just villain shows up suddenly in the middle of his day, and here they have to react to it. I'm getting a little sick of there being no build up to some of his threats. It's a formula that he is using far too much.
Yeah, you can do it once in a while. I'm not saying you can never do it, but he has been so reliant on it that it is feeling a little bit just kind of lazy at this point.
Because if he wasn't doing it in a bunch of other things, here it makes sense because of what you find out what this big kaiju is, right? It's kind of the point that it came from out of nowhere. So that would make this land a lot better if like you said, it wasn't something he keeps going back to.
Because it doesn't matter how much it's justified later. There's still the feeling of it just showing up out of nowhere. Is still just this again. Anyway, I mean the premise is that it turns out to be someone who has the ability to create things with their mind. So it's actually the talk show guy asked this kid to do it so that he would have like a big story to cover. So it kind of gets into...
He didn't think it was going to be Godzilla sized, right? So it took him all by surprise.
Yeah, but it gets into kind of like the journalistic integrity of Perry and Lois versus this guy who's trying to create the news. So there's like there is some natural things to kind of like knock on here that is a good sort of like adversary for some of the characters, and not just Batman and Superman in this case. It's actually an adversary to the other characters as well. And there's there's like I say, there's good team up with Gordon and Lois, and then Gordon and Perry is pretty solid as well. But I have to admit, everything with the actual monster and the back met fighting him, and like all the superhero action, that stuff was just kind of like, yep, that this is the comic book. They're doing comic booky things, and I don't really feel much for it. So
I will say, as the kid with the powers is talking, and it's Gordon and Perry White, and they're putting it together, and he goes, "Oh, and the phone is that how you focus your energy?" And then just this kid in the worst way possible is like, "Nah, I just like making my own soundtracks when I cut loose." And you're just like, "Oh, that's the type of person we're dealing with." So credit to Waid for making this character, just completely deplorable, So that gave me a good laugh.
Yeah. So, the issue ends with Perry and Gordon like walking down the street together, and basically just talking about Perry's saying how Clark, Gordon says something about Clark, and then he says something about Bruce. So they're basically both making fun of the alternate identities of the people they both like respect. It's just a little jokey bit to end on.
Because they were like, where'd Bruce Wayne go? And he goes, a little more excitement than a pretty boy is used to. So yeah, he's not exactly the rugged type. He goes, oh, I bet he's a lion compared to Kent. That man's scared of his own shadow, and that's where they go off, and you see Superman and Batman ahead of them,
up in the sky.
Yeah,
it's.
But yeah, it was an issue.
It's pretty fluffy. At the very least, it has that anchor of, this is about Perry and Gordon and Lois getting to meet each other and interact. So it's got a hook versus a lot of the other little one-offs or two-parters that Waid's done in this book that have just felt like complete filler. This has a little bit extra in it, but it's still kind of a filler story at the same time. It's I don't know. I think it would feel differently if he didn't just have something show up out of nowhere again. I think that's what makes it feel really repetitive to me with this book.
Yeah.
But it's not bad though by any means. And the art by Gutiérrez is pretty damn solid. There's nice big moments. Colors are bold and vivid. The
action stuff out of Gutiérrez is why I enjoyed when he was on Blue Beetle. All of these big action-y stuff. Got the Bat Mech with the kaiju, and they're fighting, and Superman's just trying to minimize damage as he's flying around it as they're trying to figure it out. But I'm sure we'll see this character pop back up, because he can seemingly make things out of nothing, right, with enough focus and power enhancers. So I feel like Waid's setting something up for later.
I'm not convinced he is, to be honest, but I mean, maybe he will.
No, you don't think so? All right.
I don't know if we'll ever see him again, frankly. But I mean, I'll happily be surprised if he does, and that would be cool. But part of me also thinks that he's just never going to be seen again, and this was just for this story. So, what are you giving World's Finest?
7.
I think I gotta go 6.5. 7 to me is me saying it's good, and I think it's just shy of that because of the problems. Even though there's a bit more to this one than some of the other fluffy issues that I think. So 6.5. We finally deviated slightly. Batman and Robin, Year 1, Issue 8. Mark Waid writing with Chris Samnee on the art. So the other Mark Waid book of just now, but this one has yet to fail or disappoint me in any way. This one is just really good stuff. It starts off with Batman and Dick playing tennis together, and it kind of intercuts with oh, sorry, they're not playing tennis. Sorry, I think. See, when I first read this, I think I took this as them playing tennis in their downtime, but the next page reveals that it's not them. And it's all just because that panel in the middle of the first page, that looks like Bruce behind the net. And if you told me that's young Dick's legs in the foreground, I think I'd believe you. It has that vibe.
He is wearing the pixie shorts at this point, so he's known for showing leg. So you get it. But you got taken just like they did, because they're going after these people that they think might be Batman, right?
That's true. That could be an intentional
the
misdirect
mobsters.
because the whole premise of this issue is that the file that Two-Face ended up with from Gordon's safe is a list of potential Batman and Robin suspects, which Batman's pretty pissed about. But the Grimraldi family are going after all of the names on the list to hopefully kill Batman and Robin. So they are coming after these characters, and Batman and Robin show up, of course, and take care of them. The big thing that happens here, though, is that Robin disarms a guy who points a gun at him, and he catches the gun and points it back at the guy, and Batman steps in immediately and hits it out of Robin's hand and says, "No guns." And Dick, who I'm inclined to believe, says, "I wasn't going to, I was just scaring him." But Batman's very explicit, no circumstances, we do not, you disarm. And in a rare case here, I'm going to say, you know what, Mark? I didn't mind the Pearls panel because it fit the moment. It was relevant to what he was saying to Dick. So for once, I'm not annoyed. Earned. Yes, for once, I'm not annoyed at the quick couple of panels of the Pearls and the Waynes lying dead in the alleyway with a young Bruce sitting over them.
You know, I have PTSD about that, right? Like, anytime I see the Pearls, immediately. I didn't realize what we were seeing until I got to the end, because I was so into the story, because it makes sense for it to land here, where this is, what, issue 8? Right? And we're doing this year 1. Of course we were going to reference it at one point, but the way that it comes here, it's the reason why Batman's so against guns, you know, and we're getting it through his mindset, this reminder of why. So just thematically, of course it's going to happen right here. And they're done in real small panels, too. It's not like he's going out of his way to completely retell the Batman origin. They're in these little slivers, you know, and they're alternating with, you know, Bruce talking to Dick. So, yeah, everything's completely earned. This is one of the rare times I have no problem seeing the Pearls.
Yeah, they're quick flashes as Batman's yelling at Dick. That's all it is. And notably the art style, which, I mean, it's kind of Samnee's art style anyway, but I thought the panel of Joe Chill looked very like a panel from year 1 in the way it's drawn, with the sort of the shadow looking like a mustache almost on the face. Yeah. That's very Batman year 1, I thought. So nice touch there.
And the way that Chill's running away in the back, he's all bathed in red. That's another, feels like it's from year 1. So
yeah, so Batman goes to Gordon and confronts him about this file, and Gordon kind of, you know, fesses up about it, and says, "Look, I do trust you. And that's the reason why that file has been closed for months. Like, you know, I've not been adding to that. That was something that was naturally happening early on, but I'm not looking into it anymore. Like, it's done. But hey, you kept it regardless. We have to, like, you know, these people are now targets because of this list. We have to do something about it." And the Gordon's like, "Okay, I'll put police protection on everyone, blah, 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 blah." Interestingly, though, at the end of the scene, Batman points out a picture of Barbara on the desk, and it's and Barbara's about Dick's age in the photograph, because she's meant to be a couple of years older. So he's like, "Hey, like, this kid, you know, like, you know, is she well behaved?" And Gordon just cracks a joke about it, depending on who you ask. And Gordon's like, "Wait, are you having trouble at home?" And Batman's like, "Trouble's a stretch. Robin's a good kid, but like, how the hell do I know if I'm being a good parent?" And he's like, "You don't really know. It's a process." It was a nice kind of like human moment between them, you know, talking about having kids, that just felt very, very human, you know, in between all the Batman-y investigation stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, I like it's a goal. It's not a goal, it's a process. And he's like, but the way you think, of course, you know, you tend to be more focused on the former than the latter. And I was like, oh God, this is why I like Mark Waid. He gets these little things, right? Of course, Bruce is going to be concerned about, you know, Dick turning out to be a good kid, and that he's not focused on the process of teaching him, right? It's all about getting him to that point where he can, you know, be an asset and help and do what's right for the city, and not the, hey, we got to learn. Maybe you know, it makes Bruce think, maybe I shouldn't have yelled at him in that way. And
Yeah,
it's that
I think
self-reflection, I think, that really nails.
That's the key thing that I think that spurs this on is Batman feeling like, oh wait, did I overreact to what I did before? Did I yell at him when I shouldn't have? And that's like him kind of coming to like the one father that he knows to like that he can maybe even possibly ask for advice. Like, yeah, he can talk to Alfred, and Alfred did raise him technically, but like it's a bit different to just having your own kid at that age. So. Yeah, interesting stuff. Also, I'm continuing to love Grimraldi and the way he treats his father. The bit here where he's like, oh, go get my father's favourite meal. I love watching him wish he could eat it. Is such a evil thing to do.
you want to hear my theory of how this is going to play out?
Uh-huh.
Is that Two-Face is going to take the form of the dad, and then he's going to stand up, and that's the last time we see Grimaldi.
You mean
right?
Clayface?
Something's going to happen. Yeah, Clayface is going to take the form of the dead.
No, but you said Two-Face.
Oh, I meant to say Clayface.
Yeah, I was sorry. Because I was like, wait, why would Two-Face? I'm like, I think he means Clayface.
No. Yes. Clayface, I probably cut out and you just heard the face part. But Clayface is going to take the form of the dad, and whatever's going to happen. And Grimaldi's going to be sitting there crossed, and the dad's going to get up out of the chair and take him completely by surprise. At least that's how I think thematically, because he is too much of a grade A D-bag, right? For this to have no consequence, But yes, he's delightfully evil.
I'm sure I made this comparison when we first sort of really introduced this to the old dad character sitting in the chair, not being able to do anything. But there's a lot of Breaking Bad Uncle Tito vibes. He's just missing the bell, but the way that he's just grimacing on his face that he can't do anything about it, and that feeling, this anger that he can't act upon, just has given me a lot of those feelings.
Was it Tio Hector?
Hector, that's it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Boom. It's funny, real quick though. We restarted watching Malcolm in the Middle, and just watching Bryan Cranston before he was Walter White. It's so different, and he's so young in comparison. And I was like, man, I think I need to go back and watch Breaking Bad again. So, and then we got this later in the week, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I do need to revisit. But anyways.
Yeah. I was never a Malcolm in the Middle person. The show didn't click with me.
It's pretty solid. It's, we're only about 8 or 9 episodes into the first season. And it instantly knows what it is, which is nice. But I'm a fan.
Too zany for me. That and Scrubs, I didn't get either of them. 2
of my favorites. So, yeah. One other difference between me and Pete. Pete's always trash talk Scrubs, and I just let it go because it's not worth the fight.
Yeah, because Zach Braff sucks.
It's not about Zach Braff, though. It's about the rest of the characters.
Most of them suck. Anyway, the next chunk is basically a murder attempt on Bruce Wayne, but Clayface is actually pretending to be Bruce and goes off to the house to check on Dick. I will admit that the start of this scene I did think was a little confusing. Because I wasn't really I think there wasn't enough context at the start of the scene of who was supposed to be here to begin with, that I didn't even really clock that there was a second Bruce Wayne, because I didn't really understand who was who. But once it kind of started to play out, I'm like, okay, I get what's happening here. Clayface is pretending to be Bruce, and he's left some men to kill, finish Bruce off. But Alfred and Bruce, take care of them, and notably Bruce tries to make it look like he's a coward, so that Alfred's the one doing the fighting, so that no one suspects that he's actually Batman. The fun part here, though, is Clayface as Bruce going into the house and saying hello sport or whatever to Dick, and Dick kind of noticing that he's acting kind of too nice and intentionally testing him by asking him a question that reveals that he clearly isn't Bruce Wayne, because he just kind of tries to play. He tries to play along with what Dick says, and it's clearly just a bunch of bullshit. So Dick tries to call for Bruce or whoever to tell them, and fake Bruce here turns into Clayface and grabs the phone. So we get some Clayface monster action of him chasing Dick around the house and Dick sliding under a desk and all the rest of it. I think what I really liked about this is that it kind of was proving the conversation that Batman had with Gordon just a little bit ago, which is this idea that Dick is very resourceful, he is a good kid, and he clock this right away. But although that said, they play it for a little dark, dry laugh when Bruce is like, "How did you know it wasn't me?" He's like, "He was too nice." Like that was a funny line and kind of rang true.
And I love the question that he asks them is about the bullies, and then Clayface Bruce is like, "We'll get you enrolled in some self-defense classes. I'll have Alfred look into it." He goes, "Nope. I mean, no, sir." Right? So like that whole point, he instantly knows something's up. So I did like that part.
Smart enough to test them. Also, before we get to like the aftermath, there's a lot of Batman and Clayface fighting. And Batman kind of wins because he has some liquid nitrogen capsules on his belt that he's prepared just for Clayface. And he's very pleased to see that they work because it actually kind of like freezes off a bit of Clayface's arm. So they've got a sample that they can test. So that's a cool thing. But Clayface does have to run away. He runs away with like part of an arm missing because he wasn't prepared for this.
Shattered.
And it's like, okay, so we've now got like a weapon we can use against Clayface. Let's see what we can do against Grimaldi and his various monsters. And I love how, again, and how in shadows all of Batman is when he's talking to Alfred and Dick in this scene at the end of this. Anyway, the issue ends with Clayface coming home and Two-Face is sitting there waiting for him and says that they're going to be working together. So says the coin, which maybe leads into what you were saying about maybe Two-Face or Clayface is going to impersonate Grimaldi's father, just because right now Clayface here is working from Grimaldi, but if Two-Face is starting to weasel his way in and maybe make him switch to Two-Face's side, where does that lead? That seems to be what this is kind of starting to tease at the end here.
It's doing that whole thing that Loeb hits at in Long Halloween of the freaks versus the regular mobsters, right? And the freaks end up needing to stand together. So the fact that the way that Grimaldi talks down to Clayface, despite him being this, ultimate resource that he can impersonate anybody, get into anywhere they need to go, and whatever, he still talks down to him because he's the guy, he's the general, he was or whatever he was, whatever his rank was, the captain. Yeah, regardless, you know my point. And that's how it is. Whereas Two-Face, he's one of the freaks, right? And they're gonna take the town for themselves. And I just see that this is the point where, Clayface makes that turn, right? And he's playing the sides, but ultimately for Two-Face. So yeah, a lot of fun. I love seeing Big Monster Clayface trudging through Wayne Manor. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good fun. I dig the sort of pulpy kind of monster stuff whenever it dips into it with the Clayface in this book. Just the further we go through it, we're 8 issues in, we're 2/3 through, and it does feel like one of those books where you'll hand someone a Batman Year One, you'll hand them a Long Halloween, a Dark Victory maybe, and I think you'll hand them Batman and Robin Year One now as like, hey, here's another basically filling in an essential part of Batman history in the continuity of like, here's Batman and Dick's first like 6 months together, like getting to know each other and becoming a better team because of it, kind of thing. So, no, cool. What are you giving Batman and Robin Year One?
I'm gonna give this a 9.
Yeah, hard to fault. I think I'm going to dip it to an 8.5 just purely because I do think the start of that car crash, like the life attempt on Bruce, is a little confusing. Like it takes a couple of pages before I kind of sorted, okay, this is what's actually happening here, and this is Clayface is here, and this he's not really Bruce. They think they've hit him with a car. I think it's just a little confusing, but otherwise I loved everything else in this issue, and I'm super excited to see where we're going now, getting into the third act, as it were. So cool. The New Gods, issue 7, Ram V writing with Evan Cagle and a little bit of Travis Moore on the art. So this is obviously we ended, we're on Earth, right? The New God ship is plummeting to Earth. We kind of ended with a cliffhanger of that last issue. And I think what's interesting here is that we don't do quite the big epic flashback anymore. And maybe that's because we're in a new arc, so we've stopped them for a little while. We do get a quick flashback of like Cyborg realizing the New God ship's arriving. The idea that they part of his tech is all New God stuff, so he's kind of reacting to it. But the big thing of this issue, though, is actually the political debate of like the new gods from New Genesis, like, are they refugees, and should, like, how should they be treated that they're here? You know, Chase shows up with the DEO and is like, hey, like, we need to take them into custody, and the Justice League basically say, no, they're kind of seeking refuge, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. And it becomes this kind of political conflict that ultimately ends up being John Stewart, who just kind of says, sod this, and builds them a camp with his Green Lantern ring for them to stay where their ship is. But it's becoming kind of like a political debate up until that point. I thought it was a very interesting direction to take this in, and it feels very different from the first arc, despite it still following neatly on from it.
So there's some stuff here that I really love that Ram V's doing, and he's playing with the dynamics between the Justice League, right? Whereas Superman's the one that confronts Chase, right? And she's coming to him basically saying, like, you know, these aliens have landed, they're refugees, you need to hand them over. But I think that it was curious that Ram V had Superman to be the person that's the first one in the way, right? And then you have Green Lantern, you have Hal Jordan, and he's like, well, you guys, you know, there are rules to these kind of things. And you get Green Arrow with the shot, like, how's that boot leather taste, right? There's some fun dynamics. But ultimately, what makes it for me is what John Stewart says about, he's like, look, man, I get the rules. I was in the military, you know, and, you know, he goes, I know you have a remit, authorization, a business card, a rule book, and a badge. I know that's what that's like. I have a job and a badge of sorts too. You should need a rule book to tell you what's right. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
And just that whole thing and what's been going on here and the way that this landed on this week, I was like, damn, Ramvi, like you were doing this thing with these superheroes, and just it's really landing home. And that entire sequence really landed with me.
Yeah, it feels oddly timely. Even just from the moment where, like, you turn the page and there's, like, helicopters with searchlights, like, looking at the ship, and it's like, oh, we've got bigger problems here beyond just, like, you know, what do we do and how do we interact with the new gods? We have to kind of deal with how Earth is going to react to them being here. So, and, you know, Orion's ready to start crushing DEO agents because they dared point a gun at Highfather, so he's getting pretty pissed. I think what's super interesting to me, right, other than all this stuff, which is super cool, right, is obviously we've got this new god child, right? This new generation, maybe the start of the sixth world or whatever we're calling them. And it's very interesting to me that the reveal during this issue that there was a second smaller group of characters who came in with the new god ship that most people would write off as maybe a bit of debris that fell off, but it's not just that. And that's actually what Mr. Terrific and Miss Martian are looking for. And it turns out that this is a few other characters like Granny Goodness and Desaad, and Metron goes to see them, and they talk about, like, what plans they've got and what this baby should grow up to be. And I couldn't help but shake the feeling that they're expecting this to grow up, like, this kid to grow up to be the new Darkseid or the new like, ruler of Apocalypse. That's what it sounded like to me. So I don't know. I think that's super interesting. That's and the direction.
It's the way that they're both sides of the new gods are trying to lay claim to the child.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
That's a good way of putting it. Both sides are trying to, or well, I mean. Yeah, the bad sides try to, like, come in and lay claim, and it was just kind of assumed before that obviously he's going to be on the good side, but, you know, maybe there'll be temptations. Well, I mean, I say temptations. Well, he's too young to be tempted by anything. Really, at this point, it would just be a kidnapping at this point by the
right. Well, and you got to think, Orion was sent to kill the kid, right? And Barda and Scott Free, you know, Mr. Miracle, stopped him, and there was that whole thing. And it just kind of, you know, why was that the first thing to do, right? Why was sending Orion to hunt this kid down, to hunt the child down, you know? But yeah, them thinking they're laying claim, but Metron doing what Metron does, right? My familiarity with Metron is he's able to go between both sides. And it's almost like he's, not that he's stirring it up on purpose, but he's weirdly trying to create a united front between the new gods, right? Like, you know, the new time is coming. Things are changed. We have the Nectari. That's the real threat, you know? But I just feel like it's playing at deaf ears, here with the Apocalyptians side of things.
Yeah, and you've also got Orion's reaction to because he's obviously been down here trying to go after the kid, which obviously he's given up on now. But when he finds out what's happened on New Genesis, and he finds out some of the people that have died, like he lets out this cry, and his face turns into more of his like original apocalyptic self, where he looks a bit more like someone that comes from Darkseid. It's, I don't know, it's a really interesting moment. And then after this big blast of energy that comes from him, the kid comes in and talks to him and basically asks if he's okay. I don't know. I thought it was like a really nice moment because it ends with them sitting next to each other, and you realize, and I think this is tying in nicely with this idea of like the apocalypse side of the New Gods maybe try to take this kid, is that this kid is basically up for kind of like grabs between the two sides. And the entire backstory to Mr. Miracle and Orion is that they were children of both sides that were swapped over. And this idea that like the apocalypse side might try and take this kid, and effectively, and this not in the exact same way they took Mr. Miracle, but they're going to end up with him and raise him his own. I think that's some really interesting thematics that are playing upon the history of these characters.
Yeah.
So having that panel where they're both sitting in the infinite white, just in silence, where Orion just where Orion's kind of relating to this kid, I thought was a really poignant little moment to end that page on.
They're sitting in the same posture, and is Kamal copying Orion, or is Orion copying Kamal?
Or neither's copying either, because they just both naturally do the same thing. Right. Because of Orion's never been more vulnerable, right? Here, he just has offloaded. We've seen his real face, and this kid comes up to apologize, right? He goes, "I'm sorry for hurting you." Even though Orion was the one trying to kill him, the kid's apologizing.
So, it's just this thing that it's doing the stuff with the dynamics. Like, you're right. Like, the whole exchange for peace, right? But there can be no exchange here, right? There's no, it's, they have to be a united front for, and is Kamal going to be the one to do that? Is he going to be this kid, this, prophesized one that'll lead into the fifth world by uniting the two sides? That's how I think Metron's reading it. But did you talk about who the Apocalypton side is hanging out with? Who recovered them? I didn't hear if you had mentioned that.
I didn't. The group with the symbol?
Yeah, they're with Max Lord.
Ah, yes. Well, yeah, because he shows up. He shows up, and he was the one that was trying to find the kid before. So yeah, Max Lord is working with them. Yeah, and they also indicate at the end that they've already got someone working on trying to get the kid. And forgive me, I'm not as familiar with this character who shows up here at the end, but someone is breaking through the DEO agents because they've got a perimeter around the camp that the Justice League have set up for the New Gods, and it seems like he's breaking his way in. But he's got a gun, and it seems like he's got one kind of special eye that's glowing. So I'm not familiar with this character, I don't think.
Okay, so that is interesting. So he is from the Forever People. His name is Seraphim.
Okay.
The youngest member of the Forever People. Seraphim doesn't have any superpowers of his own. He possesses a collection of cosmic cartridges he can use to affect numerous purposes. So, yeah, so typically I think the Forever People are on the New Genesis side of things. So,
Okay, that's interesting.
That is. I had no idea who this character was, and then
I have no idea.
Checking on when you're on League of Comic Geeks, when it's done really well, they'll have all the characters that are listed, that were in the book, and there he is. But yeah.
I hope next issue, or maybe later when it's more relevant, Ram V maybe does a little history of who this guy is, just to give us some context, because I literally have no idea who he is.
Well, because if I know my Forever People, they can put their powers together and they can get another being. I can't remember his name, but it's very much like Captain Planet. They all put their powers together, and this other being comes out. But I think at that time, when he's out and doing things, they don't have any powers. So the fact that this guy's chosen to break from that group, right? And he seems to be working with Max Lord and the Apocalypse side, probably not good.
Yeah, so that's the cliffhanger, is him sort of killing one of the guards and making his way into this area, and that's it. So, no, I think it was interesting how this felt like a very different issue to the first arc, because the first arc, there was a lot of ethereal in space stuff where there was little snippets of more normal stuff with Orion and Miracle and so on, but those were little snippets, and it felt like we were doing lots of bigger stuff. This one felt like a lot more grounded, because it was like, okay, no, we're actually going to spend most of the issue dealing with them on Earth now, and we're kind of building more of the ongoing plot. I think it's an interesting change of pace, which is smart, because it just doesn't feel like we're doing the same thing forever, which is cool. Not that I was feeling fatigued by it by any means, but I think the change of pace felt welcome when I read it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is actually a really nice time to shake it up a little bit, and we can go back to some of that more grandiose stuff when it's appropriate, maybe down the line. So it's like a shifting of gears and a refocusing, right? And the fact that Highfather now feels like he is no longer the Highfather, he wants to be called by his name, which is Isaiah. So I think that's also curious. I'm feeling like he's a failure. He didn't do, he's not worthy of that name. So, my honestly, my biggest criticism was the lack of Marta, right? Not nearly enough. So that's fair, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just really solid. It's like the fact that Ram V, who's a writer that we both really, really enjoy, and with the New Gods, which is not really a blind spot, like I kind of known, like little things here and there. The fact that he's taken and made something that I actively look forward to, and seeing how he's playing with the mythology and how he's gonna, what spin is he gonna add to it? Told me a couple years ago that him doing a New Gods book would be one of the things I look forward to most every month. It would have been a weird statement. So yeah, just the fact that how this book comes together with the guest artist at the beginning. And then with Cagle doing all of his stuff, there's just like, there's a pattern to it. And I feel like just there's an art even to that. So, but yeah, really, really good stuff. Yeah,
there's that big 2-page layout early on when they're landing the ship sort of as carefully as they can on the ground. And you've got a couple of Green Lanterns with like all their beams trying to lower it as Superman's at the bottom, try to hold it up a little bit and slow it down. Just again, that's probably the biggest, most epic moment in the issue, because it's not an epic issue of this book, compared to the other issues, but even this one has a little bit of that spectacle early on to feel larger than life. So no, cool. All right, what are you giving New Gods?
I'm giving this a 9.5.
Whoa. I will probably just go with the 9. It's excellent. It's excellent stuff. It's one of the most exciting books every month. So cool. Krypto, The Last Dog of Krypton, issue 1. Ryan North writing with Mike Norton on art. Matt did me dirty and didn't read this, so I'm on my own.
I ran out of time this week, so but I'll get caught up by the next issue for sure. I'm a big fan of Krypto in this house. Just with the week that I had, I didn't really want to read about Super Pets that much. I wasn't incentivized, so I still have it. I picked it up. I will give it a read. But yeah, so I know you're more of a streaky guy than Krypto guy.
Well,
so I'm curious to see how you come out of this.
I'm more of a cat person than a dog person. That's maybe more accurate than specifically streaky. But yeah, so basically this starts off in Krypton. It's kind of Krypto as their dog. Clark's a baby, and the elves are talking about what's happening on the planet, and they're getting more worried about it. There's some sort of stuff here where like this woman on the street talks to Lara about the quakes and says, "Oh, everything's going to be okay," and Lara's like, "Nah, it's not. I'm sorry," and walks away. Like, it basically shows this idea that there is this delusion that the council's convinced everyone that there's nothing wrong with the planet's core, but Lara and Jor-El know exactly that there is. But all of this kind of comes from Krypto's perspective, where he's getting fed, he's been called a good boy, There's an adorable page where he snuggles up to Baby Clark. There's a full page spread of him with his paw over Baby Clark. So where the issue goes, though, is that whilst Lara and Jor-El are testing their prototypes for a ship, they need to do a test with something living inside of it. And this is where it occurred to me that I've never really read any version of like how Krypto shows up. Like, obviously he gets to Earth somehow, but I've never actually read any version of it. I'm like, oh, this is how we're doing it. I'm actually going to get to read a version of this. So they put Krypto in the pod, kind of like Einstein in the DeLorean in Back to the Future, or like monkeys sent into space. Well, they say monkeys, it was chimps. But so they're doing this test, and they send him out into orbit, and they're going to bring him back down, and they're saying he's a good boy. They can talk to him over the computer. And the art's really good here because you see Krypto looking really surprised as he's getting blasted off into space. And I thought, yeah, an actual dog would be shitting themselves during all this commotion. But as he's in space, though, there's a lot of unstable wormholes near Krypton, and one starts to suck his ship in. So they realize that they're about to lose Krypto, and they start saying that he's a good boy, and they say that they love him, and the message gets cut off as he goes through, and the signal's lost. So we follow Krypto, because this is not about the elves and the destruction of Krypton. We can read that in several other stories.
Yes. We
follow Krypto's ship going through a wormhole. He goes to sleep, and he lands in a lake somewhere on a planet. And it does turn out to be Earth. But for a second, I was wondering if did he get to Earth first? Did he go somewhere else, before he got here? And he gets out, he swims to the side, he shakes it all off, and it's all these silent panels of just him wandering. He gets to Metropolis. You see a sign saying Metropolis 50 miles, and he encounters a homeless man in an alley. He has to run away from him because the guy kicks him because he's trying to go for his food. So Krypto, gets through a fence, and it looks like he even cuts himself a little bit on this mesh fence as he's going through. There's a little bit of red. So it's oh god, Krypto, what's going on with you, boy? And the end of the issue is he runs into someone who says, oh, you look lost, you seem like a good boy. And the final page reveal is that the person who has found Krypto is teenage Lex Luthor.
Oh, god damn it.
And that is the cliffhanger of the first Krypto issue.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Can't leave Teen Lex alone. You had me. Then you get Teen Lex. And is this before or after he tried to be a hero with Dr. Form and to fight Mr. Graft, whatever the hell their names are? I
assume before.
Gotcha.
I mean, who knows how long Krypto will be around Lex? I don't know. Clearly, this is a good bit of time before Superman is active. So yeah. I assume that the book is going to probably end with, like, living with Superman, but, like, how does he get... What adventures and what people does he interact with before he gets there? But it is interesting, though, because technically he should already have powers since he's on Earth, right? Because of the sun?
Right. Yeah.
But no indication of that yet, I don't think. But we'll see. We'll see. It was not bad, though. I think it was sweet enough. I think people who like dogs and who like Krypto are probably going to find some moments in this really heartwarming or really soul-destroying, depending on the moment. It pulls on the heartstrings. Honestly, the cliffhanger with Lex, I just kind of need to see where that goes before I've got an opinion on it, because it is kind of a bit of a shock thing. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be Clark, because they were hiding whoever it was. It was going to be someone else. So, I don't know. We'll see.
With their wormholes and whatever, timey-wimey.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But if Lex is a teenager, though, then presumably Clark is somewhere similar in age at this point.
Right.
So, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, honestly, it was a nice enough read. I will say, though, I did leave this till last, and I did consider, do I need to read a Krypto book? Does this feel like something that's essential? And I wouldn't say it does feel essential, but it was an easy enough read. It didn't feel like a chore or anything like that. So, I do think I might. It kind of depends, like, how packed and busy the following, like, months are on the week this comes out. But I certainly am not opposed to reading more of this, because I think the art is pretty solid. It's very expressive for Krypto. which is why it can pull on the heartstrings, because it can make him look sad or happy or excited. You get all those various things throughout, and because he's got superpowers now, you can at least assume he's going to be okay for the most part, other than maybe feeling lonely, perhaps, depending on who he ends up with. So we'll see. I'd probably give this like a 7.5. I think it's pretty good. Pretty good. I just don't know if the end game is going to be worth the effort of doing a Krypto book. It just kind of depends. So that is that. All right, so every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can make me read a book at one of the higher tiers. I am talking about Batman and the Outsiders, issue 25 today. Last issue, if you recall, set up that Sapphire and Metamorpho are going to get married, and it also set up that Gabby ended up in a cult with someone who had some snake-themed things. So, this issue, we get to the bottom of some of this, it's fair to say. So, yeah, we spent a lot more time in the cult this issue. We don't quite start there. We start with Sapphire trying on her wedding dress, and Katana's with her trying on her bridesmaid dress. And other than just the general stuff that you'd expect from this type of scene, the big thing is that the woman at the store is like, hey, it says here there's a second bridesmaid dress to be fitted. And Sapphire's like, well, we don't know if Gabby will be here, but we'll pay the money for it, and if we have to bring her in last minute, if that's okay. And Katana gets all upset, of course, thinking about Gabby, as she hears this. So it's all very sad. Cut to the cult, and it's a lot of Brother Abraham, Brother David, Sister this, Sister Eve specifically. It's Eve, of course it's Eve. We're doing Eden stuff. And she's clearly this evil witch-looking woman who's always looking over the leader's shoulder and is up to stuff. But they're told they have to work for their fair share, cook, clean, farm, whatever it is. We also see that Rex is trying on his tuxedo, with Black Lightning getting his tux ready as well for being a groomsman. But it's all kind of, and likewise they also say, hey, there's meant to be another guy here getting fitted for a tux. Where the hell's is G-Force? And the answer is that G-Force is at the hospital because his friend who tried to kill herself is getting out of the hospital. So what's weird though is he's on the phone with another woman who he says he's taken to the theater that night. And he goes to the hospital and meets with the character here, Denise, and she's changed her hair. I'll be honest, she looks kind of like Garth from Wayne's World now with this hair and the glasses. It was kind of weird and distracting.
I need to see this. I'm gonna look up this issue.
Yeah, obviously this was before Wayne's World, so they didn't do it intentionally, but it was hard to not notice it.
It's just the bangs look is hard to relate to comics. I'm sure. So you end up looking like Garth.
So she's like, hey, it's nice to be getting into the real world. She's happy to see him. He's happy to see her. And he kind of says, hey, I've got 2 tickets to the theater tonight. Would you like to go? And she's got a little thought bubble saying, oh, it's about time. So she's clearly happy that they're going on a date. But we just saw him make plans with this other woman on the phone. So,
he's two-timing.
I don't know. It's Alyssa that he was on the phone to. So I don't know where they're going with that, but I feel like Brian's going to be in some trouble from someone. And I'm worried about Denise's mental state when she finds out that he's with someone else, given how vulnerable she might be right now. She does kind of look like Garth with the glasses on. Yep, I told you.
It's
Ginger Garth.
All right. Yep.
Ginger Garth. So yeah, we go back to Gabby at the call, and she's like farming with everyone else, and over comes Brother David, who's the guy that kind of like inducted her in, and he's like, yeah, I always like, and the others comment that he always comes and visits Gabby, and David's here with the leader Abraham saying, hey Abraham, this is Gabby that I told you about. Isn't she great? She's such a good cult member. That's not obviously how he phrases it, but that's the gist of what he's saying. But so he gets really worried though halfway through this because someone runs up and tells them that David's father is here. And David's father is a military general or something to that effect. He's like high-ranking military. And apparently David ran away from home and he had a drug problem, and then the cult made him all better, but the general's convinced that they're doing something to his son and that they're drugging all the members or something. So he comes in, try to prove this, and like debating with Abraham, demanding to like, you know, be shown around and so they can investigate. And Abraham's like, oh, we've got nothing to hide. You can go look at anything. He's being all nicey goody about it. Although in the meantime, Gabby goes to the phone booth and calls Katana, but Katana doesn't quite make it to the phone in time. She just hears the answer machine get it. And she's like all upset when she picks up the phone, and she's all sad. She spilled like the milk on the floor, and the cat's licking the milk off the off the floor. Yeah, poor Katana. It's like she is really heartbroken about Gabby not being around right now, and Gabby's been indoctrinated into a goddamn cult. So yeah, there's a whole thing here where David passes Gabby a note when he shakes her hand, and notably, the female leader of the group, Eve, looks kind of smirking as she notices this happen, like this is all playing into her master plan. So basically, the general, like, you know, has all the stuff checked. There's nothing in the food or anything like that. We cut to Katana, like, where she's at like a. Yeah, she's at the bank. Right, hold on. That scene was very random to me, actually. She's at the bank, and there's a party going on saying, congratulations, Jane, because someone named Jane's got a promotion. And Katana's talking to this bank clerk, I think, to get some stuff done. This Mrs. Briggs. And Mrs. Briggs breaks down because she thought she should get the promotion, and that the person who did get the promotion only did because she's pretty. And it cuts to like a panel of this woman with like the boss who's like pouring her champagne. Yeah, honestly, I don't know where we're going with that yet, because it felt kind of like out of nowhere, and I don't know. Like, am I supposed to know who this Mrs. Briggs is? Because I don't remember her from anything. So I'm very curious to see how that comes back into things. But anywho, yeah. So. Yeah, regardless, basically the general realizes that he was maybe wrong about this place, and David's like, yes, apologize to brother Abraham, like, you've misjudged everyone. But as they're saying this, and he's kind of like saying, okay, maybe I misjudged this place, Eve is like roofing his drink. She's pouring something into this water, and then hands it to the general and says, hey, have a drink, you look thirsty. And he's like, thank you, and he gulps this down. So we don't exactly know in the moment what she's doing there. It does seem to be related though, because he's on TV later that night and Bruce is watching it, and he's like talking about the Star Wars program and activating
not the movies, the satellites.
No. Yeah, he's like, oh, we have to activate this and all this, and Bruce is like, oh, this is terrible. This is like a frightening use of technology. Like, think of the things people could do with this system. But it turns out that David, the cult guy, invited Gabby to a secret meeting by a waterfall that night. Now, they're technically breaking the rules by being out after dark, right? But he's basically saying that he was supposed to leave the cult once he got better, but he doesn't want to. He wants to stay, and he wants Gabby to stay with him. He wants Gabby to marry him, and he proposes right then and there. And Gabby gets all emotional and says, you can, I'm evil, you know, I took something, and basically, when she describes the idea that she kind of like took something, like she kind of talks about how, you know, like she stole something that had that a person had used to hurt someone, right? Meaning that the previous person that, you know, had the body was hurting people because she was a bad person, and like he's like, you mean like a gun? Like you took a gun from someone who was going to use it to hurt people? That doesn't sound like such a bad thing. And Gabby's like, oh well, when you put it like that. I mean, so they end up kissing. She never actually accepts the proposal, it's worth mentioning. She never says, yes, I will marry you. But they're kissing, and that's when Eve shows up with some other members of the cult and says, look at these two breaking the rules. They look like they're going to resist. Subdue them. And David's like, wait, no, we'll come quietly. We want no trouble. So these two guys with their sticks hit him, and he falls into the water and goes off the waterfall. Like he goes down the river into the waterfall. And she instinctively turns into Halo and flies off to grab him so that he won't fall to his death. And the two cult members are like, wait, Mistress Eve, do you see? And she's smirking saying, I do, which kind of implies she already knew that she was Halo. Like, it feels like her and Abraham kind of knew who she was. Or at the very least, they're delighted to find out. So, basically, when Halo comes back, they've got a gas ready to douse her with. So Halo gets knocked out. And when she wakes up, she's strapped to a torture table, effectively, that's sort of like up vertically. And in walks Brother Abraham, wearing a Cobra Commander outfit. He is indeed the leader of the Cobra cult, and he's like, yes, I'm the chosen god of Cobra, blah 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 blah. And basically the whole thing here is because he's like, "How you're a spy? You were sent by Batman. You're one of Batman's people," and she's like, "I'm not a spy." But basically, he brings in David and starts putting a cobra, like an actual cobra, in his face, and tells Halo to tell him everything or he's going to kill David. And she does break down. So the final panel of this issue is Halo like giving in because she doesn't want David to die. She's got a tear in her eye and she says, okay, you're right, Batman does live in Gotham, his name is Bruce Wayne. And then Cobra here goes excellent with the extra S's for the snake noise. So yeah, so this is a pretty solid advancement in plot. I do think that the cult stuff, I think the setup for the cult stuff was entertaining, and I think the result of the cult stuff is entertaining in the sense that, Gabby breaking down and like giving up this vital piece of information of who Batman actually is kind of, because I thought she was going to resist until next issue at least, but then no, she says it right at the end of this one. That's a big deal. But I will say the actual the play out of like all the stuff in the cult happening and her being introduced to the various members and all that stuff, it's a little bit like unexciting because you kind of know where it's going the entire time. You know they're going to turn out to be villains, that there's something else going on here, so you feel like you're kind of going through the motions a little bit to get to that point. I like the little snippets we get of the other characters and what they're going through. I love that we're still building to this wedding in the background because that's a nice sense of continuity. So I would say this is like a weaker issue overall in the sense that I think that, the actual playing out of the cult stuff is a little bit just kind of waiting for the turn to happen because the turn's coming. We're building to that point and you're kind of waiting for it. But, that aside, pretty good, and I'm excited to see what we're doing next issue. I mean, credit to the art here because, like, Lady Eve, every single time she's up to something, like, the art knew how to draw her in a menacing way. Or even when the general's leaving and going back to, or he's taking the drink of water that's got the whatever's inside it to make him say what they want him to say. Like, both Abraham and Eve are kind of standing back to back, and they both have just these kind of like deliciously evil looks on their faces. So there's a lot of good stuff in the art from a expression point of view. But the cult stuff like plays out like you think it would. And while I get Gabby feeling attached to new people, she is a teenager after all. Maybe she does break a bit too quickly at the end of the issue, if I can maybe suggest that she could have held on a little bit longer. But hey, I'm excited to see what the consequences are of this, and when the rest of the team realize that she's literally trapped in a cult, assuming that's what happens. But no, so yeah, I'll probably give this like a 7. I think it's good, but I do think the cult stuff, it feels like you're kind of waiting for it to make the turn into, okay, this is what it actually is. So yeah. All right, that'll take us out to the final part of the show. Our favorite panel/moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and of course top 5 books. Matt, what is your panel/moment of the week?
All right, so Batman Robin Year 1, the Clayface in stomping around the Wayne Manor, it was pretty good, especially that you turn the page and it's got Clayface turning from Bruce into Clayface to go after Dick. I like that a lot. Nightwing It had that real sinister one with Olivia Pierce not wearing her face and holding it in her hand. That's super super creepy. But mine's gonna be from New Gods, and I contemplated making it the John Lantern speech, which I thought was really important, and it really hit what I needed it to hit. But we talked about it, and it had more resonance as we were talking. But that panel of Orion sitting next to Kamal, and they're basically drawing the parallels. I think that's really really strong, and it's this little third of a panel or third of the page, bottom panel. And it's just, it did a whole lot for me. So that's mine.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned mine, to be honest, I think. I mean, I did like a lot of stuff from year one, and Wonder Woman had some nice moments. Detective had nice moments. But I think I have to go with the moment of Pierce with her face in the limo. It's just the weird existential, like, creepy David Lynch-esque dread of that is just too palpable to not love. So I gotta go with that. But yeah. As for cover of the week, obviously there's a bunch of choices here. But I think my pick is going to be the Fornes variant for Nightwing, which is the city upside down and Nightwing falling from it as if the world's been flipped upside down on him. I just think it's a really cool visual, and it kind of perfectly like signals what this issue does in terms of the storytelling, where it completely flips what we'd been doing up until that point. So it works on multiple levels. Plus you've got the idea that the lights in the building make the Nightwing logo, but it's upside down because the city's upside down. So no, cool. Which almost inadvertently makes an arrow pointing up, bizarrely. What's your cover of the week?
All right, so there's a couple candidates. Superman Unlimited has a Lionel Yu that just looks real nice. I'm a big fan of Lionel's art when it comes to Superman. And then World's Finest had this really cool Skylar Patridge one with Bruce and Clark, but Clark the cape goes up ethereally, and the blue from Bruce blends into the red. It just looks really, really good. But my main choice is there's a Doc Shaner variant for Batman and Robin Year One that's got Dick and Bruce in this alleyway that's been all graffitied. So just their classic kind of looks up against the graffiti with all the color, and it's kind of given that 60s Batman vibe, but the bang pow biff type of stuff. It's a real fun image, so that's mine.
Yeah. All right. Art of the week.
This one's tough, right? Because you have Batman and Robin Year One, right? But then there's also Nightwing. I thought Story was really good. New Gods is a good 1-2 punch, but kind of coming out of nowhere, I'm gonna give it to Absolute Flash, just because of the amount of, not heavy lifting, but the amount of emotion that gets pulled out through that art, and how it makes the story. That's gonna do it for me. So yeah, Absolute Flash.
It is tempted to go with Soy, but I think, or even Garbett for Detective, actually, but I think I'm going to go with Year One. I often do when there's a Year One issue with Samnee on art, even with that one confusing moment, which I don't necessarily think is his fault entirely, but it's still the art of the week. It still is. It's just that fantastic. So that's the pick. All right, top 5 books, Matt.
All right, so 1's going to be New Gods, 2 is going to be Nightwing, 3 is going to be Wonder Woman, 4 is Batman and Robin Year One, and 5 is going to be Absolute Flash.
Pardon me, I'm crashing here. All right, my number 1 is probably New Gods as well. Number 2, Nightwing. Number 3, I will say. Oh no, wait, no. Number 1, New Gods. Number 2, Batman and Robin Year One. Number 3, Nightwing. Number 4, we'll go Detective, and number 5, I'll say Wonder Woman, but it is definitely a close between a couple of them for that last slot. But no, good, pretty solid week overall, I will say. So I will now tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. Let's see what's on the docket. So we have we have Absolute Wonder Woman issue 9. We have Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 4. We have Superman 27, Justice League Unlimited issue 8, Green Arrow 25, Green Lantern 24, The Flash 22, Harley Quinn 52. We have the New History of the DC Universe issue 1. We have DC Sonic the Hedgehog issue 4. We have Green Lantern Dark issue 5. We have Mr. Terrific Year 1 issue 2. And there is the Peacemaker Presents the Vigilante Eagly double feature issue 4. Plus your usual facsimiles and reprints and whatnot. So yeah, we've got some bangers. I mean, the two Absolute books are heavy, like anticipated reading. Green Lantern's usually solid. Mr. Terrific Year 1 was a big surprise of how good that was. And can't say I'm not curious about the history of the DC Universe book. So
I'm so here for that.
Yeah. So that is what's coming next week. And that brings an end to the show. So thank you very much for joining us. You can, of course, let us know what you thought of the books in the comments. You can support the show and help keep it coming over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and just help ensure that it can keep existing the way it is. You can also support in a number of ways, like comment, subscribe, share us out, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that'll do it. That is Comics from the Multiverse. I'll just also reiterate and plug that we're reviewing the Superman movies over on the Collector's Cut, which is one of the movie podcasts that I do on MailFuzz Movies on YouTube, or there's a podcast feed for the Collector's Cut as well. And Superman 2 came out this week. We're doing the movies building up to the new one, of course. So if you want in-depth discussions on all those, that might be of interest. But that is the show. Thank you once again for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep reading comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.